KoitCast. Today's guest has been investigating and researching the UFO topic for nearly 50 years. He's written over a dozen books that touch many aspects of the UFO phenomenon, including the link between that phenomenon and American presidents. Please give a massive Koit welcome to Grant Cameron. Hi Grant, and welcome to KoitCast.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate your interest in what I'm doing.
Yep, I love your work, have for many, many years, so this is going to be a quality conversation for me, at least anyway. Let's jump straight in and say, what brought you into the paranormal theatre? What was your introduction, your origin story, if you will?
Okay, if you're familiar with the Nimitz story, the object jumps from 80,000 feet down to sea level in 7/8 of a second.
Yes.
That's what happened in Canada. It's 1975. It's May of 1975. In the February of 1975, there's this bunch of sightings started to happen in a town called Carman, Manitoba, where I live in Manitoba. I live in the big city, Winnipeg. This town is about maybe 35 miles southwest towards the U.S. border. And I'm basically not interested in UFOs. I'm going to university. Paranormal, I was sort of interested in Edgar Cayce, but never thought about UFOs or extraterrestrials or whatever. So the sighting started, and then in May 1975, what happened is there was TV crews who were going out trying to film this thing. And the one was the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, owned by the government, and the other one was a private agency, private TV station. The private TV station was there, and they had almost got it the one night. And then they went back and they talked to the film producer, the assistant producer on the news, and the guy said, "This is garbage. You guys want to do UFOs? You can do it on your own time. We're no more overtime. We're not going to waste any more time on this nonsense." So they took a volunteer crew out of reporters. The guy who shot the camera was actually a film editor. He never shot a TV camera before in his life. And they went out there, and this thing was on the ground. They got it on the ground. It's 8.25 miles away. The camera is set up on this road, and they're looking down this road. And so I interviewed the camera guy years later. And he's looking down through the viewfinder, and you can see this thing, it glows up, and then it glows back down, and then it glows up and goes back down. And he realizes that they almost got something the day before. So he said, "I got to get something on camera," because the producer was pretty upset about this. "I got to get something on camera. The next time it glows up, I'm going to shoot." And it's almost like the UFO said, "Are you ready? Get ready." And he pushed the trigger, and the thing jumped into the air, jumped from the ground level. And there was people actually on the ground. There was a bunch of pilots, news people, the editor of the newspaper, reporter for the newspaper. All these people were trying to surround this thing. And one car got actually within about maybe 1/4 mile of this thing, and it was sitting on an angle like a movie screen, a drive-in movie screen, but it wasn't touching the ground. It was hovering above the ground behind this row of trees. And they looked around, they went, "Wow." And then they looked, and the thing was gone. And they went, "Oh, it disappeared." But it had jumped from the ground level to 5,000 feet in the air. And when they played the film back, it was 3 frames of film. So it was 1/8 of a second, 24th of assuming 1/24 of a second per frame. It was on the bottom of the frame. The second frame is what's called a flash frame. And I'm actually doing an interview now about the Billy Meyer thing in about a week. And the Billy Meyer has the same thing. Billy Meyer film, if you've seen the films, and when I saw the Billy Meyer and I saw that, I said, "This is a real film. This guy's the real deal." Because what it is this UFO is up in the sky, and all of a sudden it just goes bloop, and it's on the bottom of the frame. Just instant. And what I'm told is it's actually on the same frame. It goes from the top of the frame to the bottom of the frame, and it's about a mile away, and it goes into the frame. So what happened is there was a first frame, it's on the ground. Second frame is just what we call a flash frame. There's just 2 arcs of light, one bigger on the right-hand side, and you can see the entire horizon, but it's only 1 frame of film, 1/24 of a second. The entire horizon lights up. And in the third frame, this thing is on top of the frame. So it has gone from the bottom of the frame, 8.25 miles away, from the bottom of the frame to the top of the frame in 3 frames. So it did this. And the people who were on the ground were going, "Oh, it disappeared. It disappeared." And they're trying to figure out where it is. They don't realize it's up above them. It actually just jumped. And so they played the film. And actually, to make another thing, if you ever heard Brandon Fugel, who owns Skinwalker Ranch, if you ever hear him talk about his first sighting, he describes exactly the same thing. He said there's about 12 guys sitting there, and they're looking at this thing, and it's plain daylight, and this flying saucer is just sitting there, hovering in the middle of the plane and the above the ranch house, and it's sitting there, and they're going, wow. And all of a sudden it goes, blip, and it moves from one side of the frame to the other, just boop, just instantaneously. And he goes, wow. It's like, just, you couldn't see it fly. It just moved from one spot to another instantaneously. That's the same thing. So when they played this on the TV, I had told my friend, I said, well, we used to drive around the big city. And I said, let's go to Carmen. Let's go see what they're looking at. And he said, okay, we'll go. And we never did go in February because we just weren't interested. We had no interest in UFOs. So in May, this film is played on the local TV station, and they're showing it frame by frame, and it's moving up and down. It's on this wave. It's flying on this wave, and on a small wave on top of the big wave, and it's pulsing. It's rotating. It's pulsing. And then there's all these echoes. There's about 5 or 6 objects in behind it, exactly the same object, all moving with it. And it's just like, wow, come on, let's go see what they're looking at. And the way I describe it is it's like you buy the lottery ticket, and there's a chance you can win. But
yes.
We're not going to win. You're not going to see nothing. Everybody else saw something. All these people reporting. And we went out there. We drove into town, this Carmen. We drove in, we drove out, we drove in, we drove out. There's 3 of us in the car, and we're going, what are they looking at? Like, what's everybody looking at here? Whatever it is, it's not very impressive. And then my friend says to me, he says, okay, I'll drive back in town one more time. If we don't see anything, let's go home. I said, fantastic. This has been a total waste of time. We turned the car to go back in town, and boom, it appeared from the left to the right. It was down low, and nobody in the car said, is that what it is? I wonder if that's what they're looking at. Everybody's like, there it is. It's like, it was just so weird. And the way I look at it, you see it looking back on your life, you realize none of this was by chance. This was actually, and what they did is they came in close enough that Grant Cameron would never, ever in his life question, are there UFOs? I was past that in the first second I saw it. I went, wow, right in front of the car. It flew across the road. It was moving very slow, maybe 30 miles an hour. And it was bobbing up and down like a bobber on a fishing line. It was sort of moving up and down. And I'm looking at this, I go, whoa, it's like, and then it came, there was a bunch of school buses. I remember the car was still moving, and I'm getting out of the car because I got to run through the ditch and across this parking lot to get where the school buses are, because it's going to get in behind the school buses. It's down so low. And I remember as I stood between these school buses, I'm watching this thing, and it's going, it's like alive. It's just pulsing as it flies off into the northeast. And then I got all my friends, and 2 nights later, said, you got to see this, man. This will change your life. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Dragged all my friends out there, and they all decided, we're going home. After an hour, I said, no, we're tired. We're going back. We're hungry. We're going back to Winnipeg for pizza. And all my friends left. And there was 28 people the second night, because everybody in the city's trying to see this thing. They're all out there, and kids drinking beer and stuff on their back roads and stuff like that. And we were there, and there was 8 people left, 8 people or 9 people left when the thing finally came. And there was a car beside us. I remember there was a car beside us, and it was a courier car, and there was 3 guys and a girl in that car. And we were there, and then these kids that we had, science fair project kids, were sitting in the field, and then all of a sudden there's this flash, like a flash tube on the horizon. And the one kid yells out, and he says, is that it, Grant? I go, I guess so. It doesn't look like what I saw the first night. And I went, flash, 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 flash. And it's jumping around the sky. And the kids that I interviewed, young kids there, to try to find out whether their parents are telling the truth, I'd say, I'd tell them, what did you see? And they said, well, we saw the bouncing ping pong ball. And I go, I saw that too. And it was bouncing around the sky. It was boom, boom. It was jumping all over the sky. And I remember the guy beside us this is when Nikons came out with motor drives, and they don't have many more, but Nikon, they would advance the film instantaneously, and it would just go click. And I remember he had the camera. So there's people are yelling and screaming as this thing's flying, jumping around the sky. And this guy, I remember there's this girl, and she couldn't see it. She said, I can't see it. Where is it? I can't see it. She's crying, and everybody's ignoring her. And I could just hear this camera go click, zzz, click, zzz, click, zzz, click. And he's unloading the camera as the thing's coming at it. And it flew right at us. And it came right in close again. It came right at us. And then it sort of made this turn, and it sort of flew back. And I remember watching it as it was flying away, and I'm going, wow, that could be an extraterrestrial spacecraft. I'm so lucky. There are miracles. There are miracles. This is unbelievable. And as it was flying away, and then I said the most important question that is spent my whole life trying to do, and that was, I was going, what's it doing? It's not doing anything. It's just flying along. Like, what's it doing? We even made a joke at the time, because we couldn't figure out why would it come to this small town in the middle of nowhere. And the joke I have is Winnipeg. I live in the coldest major city in the world. Winnipeg is the place where even people in Canada don't want to visit. I mean, this is like the last place. Like, what's this UFO doing here? And I was like, what's it doing? And we made this joke because Canadian beer was a lot stronger than American beer in terms of alcohol. So we had this thing. It was doing a beer run. It was coming from the United States, and it was doing a beer run. It was going back to the United States with the beer.
Yeah.
Because it made no sense why the thing was there. And that's what influenced me. So I said, I don't know what's going on here, but somebody's got to know what's going on here. Somebody's got to know what this is. And I've spent my entire life answering that question. What the heck's going on here? There was no question this is for real. And it's changed over and over. And even the last couple of days, I even had a download this morning. Over and over, it's almost like I'm being led. And I think the end solution I came to, my role in this whole thing after 50 years, next May, it'll be 50 years since I started, is to tell people it is 1,000 times more complex than what you think it is. Everybody wants to put it in a little box. We've got this puzzle. There's just one piece to put in the puzzle. The government would tell us what's going on. And basically, the government hasn't got a clue. This thing is so far advanced of what we actually believe. And your whole life would be shattered if they started to tell you what they know, because it's not what you think. And what I would say is almost the idea that whatever you perceive is going to be wrong. Everything is wrong. We've got everything wrong. And that's what they're doing. They're doing what I call the theory of wow. Mike Clellan calls it the alarm clock. What they're doing is they're just doing these weird things to wake you up and say, no, the world does not work the way you think it was. If it did work the way you thought it worked with nuts and bolts and stuff like that, there would be no paranormal phenomena. There are paranormal phenomena. And there was no doubt in my mind that the UFO thing was for real. And so that's where I've basically come. But it started with this thing where I had no interest, and all my friends went on with their life, and I fell off the edge of the earth. I mean, I could not get enough. I went and did a manuscript on all these people in the town. 58% of kids in the high school, when I interviewed them, said they'd seen something in the last 2 years. It was a very high percentage of people in this town were seeing this thing. And then I put it in a manuscript and all these sighting stories and stuff like what people saw and stuff like that. And the local publisher should have published it because this is a very famous story here. Everybody knew about Charlie Red Star. And she said, Mr. Cameron, you may believe in this kind of stuff. Count me among the unbelievers. What? Are you kidding me? And I never, ever went to sightings after that. It was like I never had no interest in sightings. They're just stories. They're stories you can tell. That doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't give you any information. You got to go to whoever has the information. So I've spent my whole life chasing high-level intelligence officials. The president of the United States, I had the president's website for 25 years. And I spend most of my time with experiencers, people who are actually interacting with whatever this intelligence is. And the more I look at it, the less I think it's going to be ET. It's way more complex than ET.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you, but there's a lot to unpack there, and I have a shed load of questions on that.
Sure.
Now, I've never heard of this case before, right? And I'm well versed in a lot of UFO and paranormal stuff. Charlie Red Star is new to me. You know,
I wrote a book on it. It went dead for a number of years because I actually the person who owned the airport, his wife helped me do this manuscript. And when the publisher said they weren't interested and, you know, crazy, get lost and stuff like that, I gave it to my sister. My older sister is the hoarder. She's the historian of the family. And I gave it to her. And then like 25 or 30, maybe 30 years later, she came back and says, oh, remember this? And she gave me this manuscript, this typed out manuscript. And I went, what? I couldn't remember even writing it. I go, I wrote that. And then so that's when I started to move again. And we actually got the book published. It was called Tales of Charlie Red Star. And there actually was option for a documentary. There's still time to time talking about doing a documentary on this, but it was pretty famous back at the time, but we never publicized it. So it sort of died out and the story sort of died out. We had the other one that was really big here, which is close to me, is the Falcon Lake sighting, which you may have heard about, where the guy gets burned and stuff. That's on the other side. So that's east of the city, and the Carmen is west of the city, but we sort of let it die out. And then by the time we wrote the book, I had to change all the names because they wanted a release from everybody that is in the book. And I said, they're not going to get a release. These people, they didn't want to tell the story then. They're not going to tell the story now. They're all embarrassed because it's a little town, eh? And anybody that saw it, they would be ostracized and ridiculed and stuff like that. So that's why it sort of died out. I just sort of, for 30 years, I didn't do anything with it. And I went on to do the presidents. So people know I did the presidents, but the original story was this major thing. But it definitely impressed upon me that they wanted me out, because if they had not got this thing jumping on the ground, it's the only time I've ever heard where they actually caught the thing on the ground, jumping off the ground, and it was caught on film. And that is on a documentary. You can look it up on the internet. It's called UFOs. It Has Begun.
I will
It's
definitely do that.
1979, and you'll see it's narrated by Jacques Vallée. Now, Jacques Vallée narrates this film. He describes this film, and they show this film with the flash frame jumping off the ground. And if they had not caught that thing on the ground, I never would have gone to Carmen. I never would have been in UFOs, and I would have been probably just as stupid as everybody else on the street as to what's going on. I got dragged into this thing, no doubt, because I wasn't going to go. And so they played this little game. Because when I looked at the guy, I said, when I interviewed the guy who was doing the camera, I said, and it took me 20 years to 25 years to figure this out. It suddenly occurred to me, like, that wasn't accidental. He didn't accidentally pull the trigger at the same time this thing jumped. They wanted this thing on camera. They wanted this. They needed me to go back out because I wasn't interested. I wasn't going to go back out. They needed me to go out there because I had this sort of mission thing that I was supposed to do. And I went on to, do all sorts of other things, write 20 some books on and get into the consciousness thing and near-death experiences. And I did the psychedelic book, and I've done a lot of stuff. But it all started with this sort of idea of, almost like in all paranormal phenomena, ripping the veil. So you have people who have trauma events, sicknesses, abuse as a child, and stuff, and the veil sort of opens up. They sort of learn to dissociate, and that's what happened to me. I just flipped out when I saw this. And I couldn't get enough, and I started to chase this thing, and I started to get the pieces were starting to hand it to me. I've had two major downloads in terms of telling me sort of what's going on, and the bottom line one that was the most important was when I did 27 high dose sessions with psychedelics with psilocybin, and yet you do the high dose, you want to break through. I wasn't interested in the experience. I was interested in breaking through into the field. I already knew then that there was a field and all the answers were in the field. And I knew I could get in the field. And it was like a roller coaster. I hate roller coasters, but I'm going to get on the roller coaster and I'm going to go check this out. And I was told repeatedly over and over and over again during my experience, I called it the psilocybin school, because all I said is, I'm here for school. What do I need to learn? And they started giving me these lessons, one after another, these lessons about how things work and stuff like that. And they would go after my ego. They say, you think you know what's going on? You haven't got and they would swear, you haven't got a clue what's going on, buddy. You haven't got a clue. And then next time I go in, they say the same thing. You think you know everything? You think you know what's going on, buddy? You think you got it all figured out? You haven't got a clue. And they kept saying this thing. And then at one time I got so upset. I said, what do you mean? I'm just here. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. This is my whole thing. What's going on? I'm trying to figure this thing out. I said, come on. I'm not here for anything else except to figure out what's going on. You tell me what's going on. And then this voice says, we don't know either. And I go, oh, go to hell. Come on. You don't know.
Exactly. Then it's messing around with you. That's what that is. It's trolling. So a couple of questions on your sighting. How many people do you think saw Charlie Red Star at that point? And how many people were activated, so to speak, to be interested in the topic like yourself?
None. I was the only one activated to be interested. I was the only one. There was, as I said, I did the high school, and it was 58%. I did a lot of high schools around, a lot of schools in the Manitoba area, and it was always 11%. Wherever I went, it was 11%. Carmen, it was 59%. So it was very high. Like most of these kids, but it's sort of the story, they saw it, and it didn't affect anybody else. It only affected me. And that's where I got the idea that it wasn't an event out there. That's where one of the illusions I think people have is that there's an event out there. There's a separation. There's an objective world out there. The Einstein idea. The moon is behind you when you're not looking. And it's like, no, it's not. These things are happening. We're manifesting this stuff. So it didn't affect anybody else except for me, because the whole thing seemed to have to do with me. Is they wanted me out there. They wanted me to get this sort of stuff. And once I was down the rabbit hole, then they started giving me other stuff. Like I had this download experience of the fact that it's all consciousness, and it came with absolute certainty. And it gave me these examples of things, and I went, oh, and then I had a big download in 2016 where I was given 24 things. I'm walking down a road and the stuff's coming into my head, and I'm madly writing this stuff down. You think it's this? No, it's this. You think it's this? It's this. You think it's this? You got it completely backwards. And this is the message I kept getting all the time. And so that's why I think my message is to tell people, you think that there's an objective world. There is no objective world. As Seth, the famous first channeler in the New Age, said, you manifest everything around you. There is no other rule. And as hard as that is to believe, that's true. We're doing it at a very slow rate in the physical world. But if you take a look at people who are, say, in a lucid dream state or something like that, you can manifest very quickly. Or in a DMT state, they'll talk about the being is singing. And as he's singing, stuff is manifesting out of his mouth as fast as he can sing. and this sort of thing. And you start to realize the world is this plastic thing, and it's all consciousness. That's what I was told. It's all consciousness. There's the physical world doesn't exist. When you break it all down, it becomes these subatomic particles, which are just fields, and it's all vibration. And physics is starting to prove what the whole Eastern religion said 5,000 years ago. It's all Maya. It's all consciousness. It's all creating. God did not create the heaven and the earth. God created the sparks of the divine, and we are creating the heaven and earth out of consciousness. That's how the world is being built, and it's becoming more complex and grander. And that's what we're doing. We're just developing this world. It's not like God creates this physical universe and then puts the spirit into the body. That's long gone. We now know that time space is an illusion, all this kind of stuff. This quantum physics is starting to explain to us the stuff that the Eastern mystics knew 5,000 years ago.
So do you think it's like a cumulative world building experience? So say you are a real spirit and I'm a real spirit. You and I are both conjuring our own subjective reality. So we're sort of building our own bubbles, and then they're all intertwining to create this big bubble of the universe. Do you think that's what it is?
And we're working together. So there's this idea now. If you follow Jim Semivan, and I can give you, there's a lot of examples, but Jim Semivan is one clear one. I wrote a book on UFO sky pilots. 36 people came to me that said, I flew the craft. And I wrote this book, and I learned these really weird things about the craft. And at one point, Jim Semivan is giving an interview. And one of the things that bothered me when these people are telling me these stories, they would say, I'm on the ship. Like there's a U.S. Air Force colonel, guy out of L.A. He says, I'm on the ship. He says, I think it seems like a dream. I said, everybody thinks it's a dream. Just tell me the story. And so he said, well, I'm on the ship. I'm on the ship. And there's somebody behind me. I don't know if it's humans or it's aliens. There's somebody behind me. And they say, okay, go ahead and do it. And he said, I don't know what to do. And the voice says, you know what to do. Just do it. And he sees this panel, and he goes, puts his hands on this panel. And he said, it's like, suddenly I'm flying it like he flew F-16s in Iraq. He said, suddenly it's like I'm flying the F-16. And he's got his hands on the panel, and he says, wow, and then he takes one hand off the panel, and he's waiting for the UFO to stall. And then he whatever he thinks is what the craft is doing. And then he takes his other hand, but he leaves it about this far off the panel so he can quickly put it back down if it stalls. And then he's got his hands off the panel, and whatever he's thinking is where he's flying this craft. And so he was the first to bring up this thing. There's somebody behind you. And then I had a guy from Liverpool who said the same thing. There's somebody behind him, and they're telling him what to do and stuff like this. And this sort of bothered me. So Jim Semivan is being interviewed by James Ian Dolly, and he's trying to get him. James and Jim had this experience in 1992, 1993, where the being's in his room with his wife. And so Jim's trying to get him to talk about it. He said, I don't talk about it. They're investigating it, and I don't want to talk about it. Stuff like, and James is trying to dig him, and he's trying to get something. So he's sort of ready to give up, and he says, oh, okay. Well, last question. Was there any telepathy involved with your experience? And Jim says, that was the most interesting part. He said, I was standing there, and these beings were there. And he said, there was this thing behind me. I don't know what it was, whether it was a gray or a reptilian or a tall white. And it had this guardian type thing going on about it. I went, oh, and it's the same thing. There's somebody behind you. And that's what happened to me in the psychedelic thing. There was always somebody with me that was showing me stuff, that was explaining stuff to me, but I couldn't see them. And I had just assumed that it was a voice, but it was somebody was with me. And so Jim Semivan, when he said there was this guardian type thing going on about it, I said to James, hey, James, call him back and ask him, was it on the right side or the left side?
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask, is it left side?
I'm a big thing on Michael Newton. I saw Michael Newton lecture, and that blew me away, because it was another lecture I didn't want to go in. And when I went in there, I was just floored by this life between life idea. And this is the whole idea. When you die, you go in front of the council between 3 and 12 people, and you're standing there, and they ask you, how does it work out? Paul, how did it work out? You can't bring up Hillary Clinton and the mother-in-law and the dog ate the homework and stuff. It's about you. Well, how did it work out? You planned this, and your spirit guide stands behind you on the left-hand side. Yes. So when Jim Semivan said there was somebody behind me and it had this guardian type thing going on about, and then I said, is this actually aliens, or is this spirit guide? Is this you and your higher self make up the story? Because we're in the space age now. Even if you go back, people say, oh, no, it's ET, Grant. Forget it, it's ET. I say, okay, 1896, when we invented radioactivity. There's 10,000 ships, not one, 10,000 reporting in Europe and Great Britain. They said they're from Mars. Did they actually take these wooden ships and fly through the vacuum of time and space vacuum to come from Mars. And number one, people say, well, no. Well, then who were they? What was this? And where did they go? Where did they go? Where did the Adamski crafts? Where did the contactees in 1950? Where did all those aliens who wore suits and stuff like that, and long hair from the Bible type stuff? Where did they all go? And this is the whole thing. The thing is I've been in it long enough to know that it's moving. It's morphing as we go along. There was no cattle mutilations till 1967. There was no grays. I don't care about any sense. There was no grays till 1961, till Nancy Train had the first abduction with her friend, who was taken 2 months before Betty and Barney Hill. Then the grays come in. There was no reptilians till 1980, and the crop circles came in, and then the crop circles sort of faded out. Then you had people that had no light language when I started. There was windows in the crafts when I started. There's no windows anymore. And even the biggest one, Stanton Friedman used to make the claim. He said, we got evidence. We got piles of evidence. There's 4,000 trace cases where the UFO lands and it leaves the tripod marks like it did at Redwood Forest and burns out the grass and stuff. There has not. I wrote the letter to the guy that was the expert, was Ted Phillips. In 2001, I already picked this up. I wrote Ted Phillips. I said, Ted, am I wrong, or have ground traces stopped? And he said, yeah, it's pretty much true. He said, there hasn't been one this year yet. There used to be one every second day. There hasn't been one all in 2021. In 2001, there are no landing trace cases anymore. They're past that. They're doing crop circles. They're doing all this other stuff. The little orbs. Now the big thing is orbs, and that's what you see. This thing is it's almost like they're turning the pages of a book. But it's us. It's us and our higher self. That's when Jim Semivan said this guardian type thing going on behind me. Then I said this, because Michael Newton tells this very famous story, which sort of defines the mistake the UFO people are making. He tells the story where what he does in his practice of 7,000 people was he takes people to their past life, lets them die, then takes them in the spirit world. Okay, you're leaving your body. Okay, what happens now? I'm going to a tunnel. Okay, what happens now? Oh, there's people greeting me on, and he goes through this thing, and they go back to the soul group, and he goes through all that kind of stuff. But what you get is that this situation where he regresses a guy who dies at the beginning of the 20th century, and the guy's a fire and brimstone preacher in his last lifetime. So Newton says, okay, go to the tunnel. Okay, what's happening now? And the guy goes, oh my God, the devil's here. And Newton goes, what, the devil's here? Yeah, he's right in front of me. And he said, well, okay, well, where? And he said, he's right in front of you. Can't you see him? He's right here. And the guy's sweating, and Newton's got Kleenex, and the guy's sweating, and he's going, I knew this was going to happen. I spent my whole life preaching for God, and now I meet the devil, and that he's standing right there. And then Newton says, and Newton, of course, figures that he knows this is this is something else. So he says, okay, so what's he look like? And of course, he's got leathery skin, he's got fiery red eyes, he's got horns, and he's describing him and stuff like that. And then Newton says, so what's it wearing? And then the guy says, I can't really see. It's just kind of like smoky below his thing. And that's the whole thing with the UFO thing. It's weird. It's what Jacques Vallée calls absurd. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, he does not wear any clothes. He's not human. He's just a head and stuff like that. And then he says, okay, go into the future and tell me, who is this really? And then he says, I can't remember the guy's Scallion. And he says, yeah, I knew it. It's Scallion. I knew it was Scallion. Yeah, he's always doing this to me. And he said, well, who's Scallion? He said, it's my soul guide. He says, my spirit guide. And he's wearing a mask for the devil. And then he says, well, why would he do something like that to you? And he says, yeah, it makes sense. He says to me, now you know what it's like to sit in your congregation and hear about fire and brimstone. And so he's wearing this mask of the devil to teach him this lesson as he's going out of this life. And that's what we're making this mistake. We're assuming it's alien. We're assuming it's this. But if you go back, and the aliens keep changing. And I even show that in the 1940s and 1950s, the alien descriptions were people with bubble helmets. And that's right out of science fiction cartoon stuff of the 1940s and 50s. And they're reflecting, or Barbara Streisand's stepson is an experiencer. His name is Chris Peters. And he told me, he said, what he was told by the beings, when we come into your world, we go into your head and we see what's in your head. And whatever's there, whether it's fear, love, whatever you believe, that's what we're going to use to teach you a lesson. We have no other choice. So that's what they're doing. They're reflecting off the fact that it's a space age. It used to be leprechauns and stuff like that. Now it's this, and it's reflecting what it is. But it's not. If people want to believe that there's this physical world and there's these aliens that can eat, they're going to kill us and rape the women and eat the children and all this kind of stuff. and it's reflecting what we have. Whereas in fact, we are the ones that are creating this. We're part of this thing. And when you start talking to experiencers, they'll say the same thing. They'll go, I met this alien. They're so familiar. I don't know where I saw them, but I think they're my family. And then I'll even bypass it, even that where I start to learn what's going on, and then I'll bypass it. So when somebody says they've been on the ship and they had the beings or whatever, I say, so what's the name of the guy you were dealing with? And then they go, oh, that was Da. That was LB. That was Mister, and they've got a name. So it's the whole idea. There's one being that deals with you, that answers your questions and stuff. So is that actually the head alien, or is that your spirit guide? Is this idea? And people will bypass. They don't even know what I'm doing. I just go, okay, so who's the guy you're dealing with? And they'll name off. And so you have these aliens have human names, Western names, English names, and stuff like that. And they have this interaction. And it's the same thing as Jim Semivan. Who is that being behind him? Is that actually an alien, or is that a spirit guide? And you're playing this little role to teach you some sort of lesson.
So is that where you've come to now across all your years of investigations? And we'll touch on investigations in a sec. Do you think you've bypassed the reality of the mask, so to speak, as in aliens are just a mask that the paranormal or spirits in general wear? Is that what it is? And the reality is we are spiritual beings being guided by other spiritual beings, and that's it.
Maybe not even by other spiritual beings. There's only one thing. That's the main message of the phenomena. It's only one thing. It's all one thing. Yeah. It's all. It's like the Eastern description. The Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be named is not the Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The Tao is the beginning of heaven and earth. The Tao is the mother of 10,000 things. But the Tao is not a noun. It's a verb. It's all alive. It's all connected. It's all one thing. And what we want to do is separate it. So we do in science. We take the Tao and then we name it. So there's planets, there's stars, there's nouns, and they're all inanimate. There's no God. It's all happening randomly. There's these things bouncing into each other. The Tao is not the noun. It's a verb. And what we do in science is we try to break it down into these little pieces and say it's just the little pieces, when in fact it's all one thing. It's all this verb thing. So even the idea of the spirit thing is we are creating the whole thing all together, co-creating, and this idea that it's our higher self that are dealing with us. If we're dealing with some sort of thing, whether it's in the psychedelic world or it's in the UFO world, the separation thing, because that was one of the download things I got in 2016. You believe that there's things, the things are separate. They're not. It's all one thing. And you'll hear over and over and over again this idea. The Eastern idea was Atman equals Brahman. The small selves equals the big self. It's all one thing. If you listen to Bashar, the channeler, the one is the all are the one. This idea, or a guy by the name of Brett Oldham. He's really angry about the Greys. He's on the ship, and he said he'd kill them if they had let him loose on there. He's furious at these Greys. And the tall Gray says, so what's your concept of God? And again, the tall Gray says, we are one with the one who is all. Or Sherry Wild, she if you're familiar with her story, she writes the book called The Forgotten Promise. You made a promise. You made a promise like me. You have a contract to do, and you forgot it. And she, at one point, she puts the book in. They want her to do the book, and she says, I'm not doing your damn book. I'm not reading your damn book. No. And then he says, no, time is everything. You got time to do this book. You got to do this book. So she finally gets the book done. Her oldest daughter breaks away from her, doesn't want to have anything to do with her and stuff like that. And then she goes to the publisher, and the publisher said, hey, you said you said Daw's from Andromeda. She said, yeah, he's from Andromeda. And you said, well, he's a Zeta. You said he's a Gray. And she said, yeah, he's a Gray. Well, he can't be a Gray if he's a Gray. He's from Zeta Reticuli. He can't be from Andromeda. And she said, really? She doesn't know. She goes, really? And he said, yeah, go ask him. So she goes and Daw comes and she says, so Daw, what the hell's going on? Are you actually an alien? And his exact words were, that would not best describe who I actually am. I'm an etheric being on a mission in the cosmos for the Creator. And then she goes back to the publisher, and the publisher says, well, why has he got this stupid Gray thing on for then? Well, why does he do that? He goes back, he says, okay, so why are you wearing this Gray? Why do you come as a Zeta? And then he says, well, the human body is very fragile. It's very hard to reproduce. It's more functional to be a Gray. So we come as Grays. And then she's going, but you're so scary. And you scare me. And wow, you're so ugly. And he says, what, you think I'm ugly? And she says, well, you scare me. Every time you come, you block my memory. And then when you come, I forget who you are and you scare me all over again. And then he says, Sherry, you ever look in the mirror? And she goes, what do you mean? He says, you got those big teeth, Sherry. When you smile, we think you're going to eat us. So this is this idea and you start asking. So I asked Nancy Tremaine, who was the first person to be abducted before Betty and Barney Hill. I said, Nancy, ask them, are you an alien? And she comes back and she says, they say we are not alien to this planet or any other planet. We've always been here. Or if you've ever interviewed the people that the two girls in England, in London, who have the beings, if you know the story of the beings, these little beings, they call themselves chons, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. They would only be known as beings or anything like that.
I've not heard that, no.
Yeah, so the one is that can actually see them. The other one can just sort of hear them, and they're getting messages, and these beings are giving them the same thing, the oneness message, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, at one point, the one who can see them says, oh, they want you to interview them. I said, really? Cool. I'll really, because I've had a number of encounters through experiencers getting messages for me from aliens. So I said, sure, I'll interview them. So I go on there, and of course, what's the first question I ask? Are you extraterrestrial? And the answer was absolutely unbelievable. They said, would you like us to be extraterrestrial? We could do that if you want. We could even take you to our planet. But no, we're not extraterrestrial. We've always been here. You're the visitor. And that's quantum physics now. There is no future past. It's all here now.
No,
this idea you're living all your lifetimes at the same time. So if it's all here and now, if everything's here and now, where are these beings from? They're from here and now. They're not coming from anywhere. And that's what you see if you start looking at, I do all the other paranormal phenomena. I'm actually doing a book called The Big Game. It's going to be a 2-part book that I'm going to bring out where I put all the paranormal phenomena and I link them all up, and you say, this is happening in this phenomena, it happens in this phenomena, and stuff like that. And what you get from that whole thing is the fact that it's all basically the same sort of thing, and we're interpreting things. And when you come down to it, everybody's having the same experience, and they're having it through different lenses, seeing it different ways. And so to me, it's this very complex thing. Or even the latest interview that Jim Semivan gave, if you heard it last week or a couple of days ago. And this guy got briefed. He got briefed by Ron Pandolfi when he left the CIA. He got briefed. He knows what legacy programs are. He knows what communication. He doesn't talk about it, stuff like that. So this guy knows a few things, and you should be listening to what he says. And he talks about, what do you do? And I use the same expression. I say, so you want this disclosed? And Eric Walker, who the highest level source anybody ever had, we chased him in the 1990s. He said to us, so when you figure it out, what are you going to do with it? And Jim Semivan brings up the same thing. When the dog catches the car, what are you going to do? And it's like, people aren't going to do anything. They're just doing it for curiosity. And so you have this, situation where people are curious, but in the end, there's something much more complex than just them and us. It's this sort of lesson that we come in, or even if you get Michael Newton, where he'll talk about people in the spirit world, and he said, "What are you doing?" Like I said, I'm making a rock. He said, "You're building a rock?" Well, I can't do plants yet. And you get this idea that people are building stuff. And that comes across the same in the UFO field. There's one, Mark Sims wrote this book where he has a C5 encounter with Greer, and this alien shows up and it's inside his body for 13 days and gives him all this stuff. Exactly the same story. It starts with very small things. We're making more complex. And at the top of the scale, level 15, you have beings who are actually manifesting galaxies at that level. And it's this idea, wherever you are on the level, and we're just moving up this level, and we're sort of learning. And the bottom line is we're all one thing. There's no separation. And once you start to separate things, that's when you get, the way I describe it is, all that you would consider to be evil in the modern world is created by one thing and one thing only: the mistaken belief in separation. If you realize it's all one thing and you're connected to everybody else, why would you cut off your own arm? Why would you do this?
Well,
kind
you
of
wouldn't,
stuff?
would you?
Yeah.
Here's the interesting thing, right? If we're all one, that means I'm you and you're me, yeah. Which means I need half of your money now, Grant. You have to share it with me.
Yeah, but the way it works, and you'll see this with the Congress. This is what I say in Congress. What you do to separate somebody from their money is you preach separation. There's these bad aliens out there. There's bad Mexicans. there's bad Russians, there's bad Chinese. We need a $900 billion defense budget. We need all sorts of technology and secrets and stuff like that. And then people go, really, really, really? And that's what happened in the UFO thing. You couldn't get any funding for UFOs because it wasn't a threat. Leslie Kean wrote a book in 2010 about the generals of these witnesses. And she put out the thing, well, they're a threat. We need to investigate them because they're a threat to airline traffic. And everybody goes, everybody just went. And what they've done, what are they doing? They're saying it's a threat. There's footprints in the room, and where did the footprints come from? And it could be a threat, and we have to look at that as a, and then everybody goes, a threat? They're going to eat us? They're going to rape us? Stuff like that. And people go, how much money do you want? And they walk away with money. They actually came. I don't know if you know the story. I actually got the top guys, Elizondo, Mellon, Nolan was going to be part. We didn't talk to him, but Nolan was going to be part of the group. Avi Loeb were going to be part of the group. And the Canadian MPs, a bunch of Canadian MPs had declared secretly that they were interested in UFOs. So I said, well, what I'll do is I'll get all the American experts and we'll do a YouTube video, and anybody can broadcast it, wants to broadcast it around the world. Anybody, it's open to anybody. And what will happen is these MPs will come forward publicly and they'll say, oh, we're interested. And all the Canadian people go, these guys are all interested in UFOs, all these government people. Wow. And then they're going to ask questions because they're novices. They don't know what's going on. So then they'll ask Elizondo and Mellon and Nolan all these questions about UFOs. And this is all going to be broadcast live. And it was going to be like a real circus. And so at one point, then Mellon says, they're saying to us, well, you got to get these military witnesses. And you got to bring them in front of a committee and stuff. And we'll go, well, you don't understand how the Canadian government works. It doesn't work like the American government. The committees don't have money to spend. They can't do this kind of subpoena people and stuff like that. It's all run by the prime minister and stuff like that. We're trying to explain this. No, they wouldn't listen. They kept bringing on this thing about the military people. And we said, well, Canadian, we don't have any military people. We don't have all these stories about military engagements with UFOs and stuff like that. We don't have this. And the Canadians are going to do an investigation. And what this program was going to be a cover. So since this is about to happen, the Canadian government is about to put out a UFO study, and it's done by the science advisor to the prime minister. Now, at that time, the science advisor was sitting there waiting for us to do this show on the internet. And what it was going to do is be cover. So it'd be a big thing. Everybody would be talking about this engagement. The Canadian, all these government people have come forward and they're answering questions and UFOs and stuff like that. And then the science advisor will say, well, we should do a UFO study, because look all these people are interested. And then at one point, the Canadian, there was an aide to one of the MPs in Canada was saying, well, you don't understand the government works. No, we're going to do a scientific investigation. It's not going to be a military threat investigation and stuff. It's going to be a scientific investigation. And at that point, Chris Mellon said, that's the poison pill. I'm gone. And it was like, you're not going to do the threat thing. We're not going to help you. And it's like they kept down this Logan Act. We're not here we can't tell other governments what to do. But it was basically, we're not going to tell you, we can't tell you what to do legally, but if you don't do what we tell you to do, we're not going to talk to you. And the whole thing broke down. And then one of the people that was sort of negotiating for them came back and said, well, Graham is going to turn this into a circus. I said, damn right, it's exactly the idea. We're going to turn it. Yeah, we're going to turn it into a circus. That's what you want. You want high publicity, and you want
eyeballs on it,
dramatic event that took place. So that's the whole thing about fear. So when you get people afraid and you say, I'm the Messiah, you are in trouble and you are going to die and unless you give me all your money and I will save you. That's what's happening in the United States right now. It's this idea that there's a Messiah that's going to save everybody from the evil, whoever,
whatever boogeyman.
That's how you get money. Is you got to get a fear going. You got to create a need and fill it.
Completely agree. If we're looking at the topic as a big thing, whereas our universe doesn't really exist, it's all stuff we make, and we're looking at the world completely wrong, why are people like yourselves directed and woken up? Does that tell you that the way we're building, we've done it wrong, and they're trying to course correct our building? Is that what it is, do you think?
No, it's all a learning process. So it's this idea of the non-intervention. You can't interfere with somebody else's evolution. But what you can do is you can come in and you can say, come in as a human being. And then you're part of it. So that's when you get all these experiencers say, I think they're my relatives. I think I used to be an alien. and they would send me on this mission. Or I'll say to people all the time, I'll say, and Mike Clellan will say the same thing. He'll say to people, so I question 1 to 10. You on a mission? And then the people will say 1 to 10. And the people will go 11, 10, and everybody. If you ask an experiencer, do you think you're on a mission? They'll say, I think so. I don't know what it is, or they'll tell you. They'll say, yeah, I'm on a mission. They'll tell you exactly what their mission is. It's like they've come in to do this. So we're playing this little game. And this is how we evolve. We can't do it from the outside, but we can do this evolution because they can't interfere with us. So we come in, and what we're doing is we're just raising the consciousness of the world. And people will say to me, oh, I want to get off the karmic wheel. I want to, and I say, you know what that is? That's like being on the Titanic as a man, dressing up like a woman and hiding and getting onto the life raft and then waving at everybody else as they go down on the ship. Nobody is saved until everybody's saved. So it's this idea that we keep coming back. I say, why would the aliens do this? Because that's how it works. We're the only people in the universe who believe this idea about us. We are the only things, and this idea. Everything is altruistic. If you take a look at the aliens, you'll see aliens don't have any clothes. They don't have any chandeliers. They don't have any furniture. They don't have anything. They're just basically helping. They're doing this altruistic thing because it's all right brain. We're left brain. The left brain is the male brain. The right brain is the female brain. And what happens in all paranormal phenomena is you shut the left brain down. You shut off the little thing that wants to have the urinating contest, that wants to shoot each other. And this competition is a football game. It's a soccer game. It's your team versus our team. And your team is evil. And they got bad guys on them. And the referee's always pulling for you guys. And it's this male thing is fighting. And the woman says, well, let's have a family. Let's get together. Let's all be one. And stuff. And so what you do in all paranormal phenomena is you shut that left brain down and you go into the right brain. And the right brain has access to the universe. It has the answer to everything, and you can access this kind of stuff. And that's the shift that we're making. And this is what everything is happening, is moving us from the left brain to the right brain. But it's all lessons. So there's no good and bad things. There's no good lessons, bad lessons. There's only lessons. Especially if you got reincarnation, because people say, oh, it's terrible, this couldn't possibly be happening. And in the reincarnation world, you probably agree that you agreed to come in and you agreed to be born at one time and die at another time, that you're going out. So if you agree to your death, you're agreeing, and you'll get things like, for example, in the UFO community, you'll have the free survey. If you're familiar with the 4,200 people they did with survey of the experiencers, 40% of them say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. Near-death experiences, 31% of people say at one point during my experience, I knew the answer to everything in the universe. And then you'll see that when you take a look at UFO experiencers, 37% of all near-death experience, 37% of all experiencers, UFO experiencers who have interacted with a non-human intelligence, say they've had near-death experiences. So what's the chances that you went through the front windshield of a car and had a near-death experience, and you also got abducted by aliens? Like, what's the chances that 37%? And you say, maybe it's not coincidence. Maybe it's the idea. It's not random. It is planned. We plan to do this. We plan to do that. And it's this whole idea of this raising of consciousness where we're all in this thing and we're doing this kind of stuff. And there is no good and bad. There's just lessons. Everybody's at their vibration. Everybody's vibrating at a different level. The beings are vibrating at their level, and we're all in the water. So there's not people always want to separate. There's 9 levels, and it's the da. There's no nouns. It's all the thing. It's like you're in the water, and we're in the dark part of the water. It's very dark here. We're at the very bottom of the sea, and you can't see anything. And then from time to time, someone will shut down the left brain through hypnosis, through meditation, through psychedelics, through a near-death experience or whatever, and they'll sort of float higher in the water, and suddenly they start to see stuff because the light is coming in, and they can see stuff, and then they go, holy cow, and they're looking around, and then they float back down, and they say, some fish. They go, no, there's no fish. Come on, there's no fish. What are you talking about? And then you raise even higher up, and then the people think that there's this level, that we're at a certain level, and they go to the fish and say, hey, Paul, fish, what level am I on? And the fish goes, what are you, an idiot? You're in the water. There's no levels. You're in the water. And that's the whole deal. The closer you get to the surface, to the sun, where the sun is, the more you can see. And then you get people who can get actually very high into the field. And that's what we've got. So that's why you got to listen to these people. Have they got access to the field? Are they getting material from the field? And that's why I say, forget the UFO sightings. It doesn't matter how many green ones and red ones. We think there's a pattern. We think they're nouns, and there's a pattern. And if you can figure out what the green ones mean and the red ones mean, no, that doesn't mean anything. You got to talk to people who are interacting with the phenomena. And in the UFO community, the experiencers are the illegal immigrants of the UFO world. They are ostracized. You do not bring them up. Do not give me that new age crap. Don't bring this kind of stuff. Just talk about technology. So we're still very left brain. I call it the boys' toys club. It's like, let's get some technology. And the phenomena is actually at one point, I remember years ago, had said, do not go down the technology route. It's a trap. Do not go there. And this is this whole idea. We think that there's this technology, and yet you see, well, what's the technology? They're dropping this stuff. They like, you have this metal, and everybody goes, oh, piece of metal. Oh, we're gonna build flying saucer here. And it's like, come on. They came 1,000 light years across the universe, and then pieces started falling off the craft. Are you insane? Did you get hit in the head with a windmill? Like, come on, what's going on? Come on, they're dropping this stuff. I even said to Hal Puthoff, because Hal Puthoff had an experience with this with Uri Geller, where Uri Geller is eating ice cream, and then suddenly he cuts his lip, and he pulls it out, and Edgar Mitchell's sitting at the table, and Edgar Mitchell said, that's my flight pin. I lost that in Houston 2 years ago. Like, where'd you get that from? And he's got the flight pin, and they go back to the SRI lab. Yuri Geller's in another room, and they're standing there, and all of a sudden, dink, and they look behind, and the back half of the flight pin is on the floor. That's the kind of stuff. That's what they're doing. That's what the phenomenon is doing. It's doing this weird stuff, and it's like alarm clocks. It's waking you up and saying, it's not the way you think it is. The world doesn't work. And they're giving you these little hints. And we're playing this sort of a game as we raise the consciousness up. And when we go back into the spirit world, we know everything. And this is the thing. 40% of all UFO experiencers say at one point during experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And another thing that people say, which is that's totally contradictory to everything you believe. Nick Cook is one. You're familiar? Nick Cook, he wrote the book, Hunt for Zero Point, British guy. And his wife has a shared near-death experience. So in my new book, I talk about this chapter about everything's perfect. I started running into all these people who said they had been in the field, and Nick Cook's wife was one. So Nick Cook's wife's mother is dying. She's sitting there holding her mother's hand, and then Nick is sitting in the room, and all of a sudden the mother dies, and the wife gets up and she says, everything's perfect. She goes walking out of the room, and Nick Cook goes, what are you talking about? So he says, a couple hours later, he goes to her, he says, what are you talking about? Your mother just died. How can everything be perfect? And she said, weren't you there? And he said, no, wasn't I where? And she said, you weren't there? I was in this field, and I knew the answer to everything. Exactly what the UFO people say. I knew the answer to everything in the universe, but I wasn't allowed to bring it back. And everything was perfect. Everything was exactly the way it's supposed to be. So I start looking at all these people. One's a doctor out of Toronto, Canada. One is the head of the psilocybin lab at Johns Hopkins University. Nick Cook's wife. One guy in a float tank. He spent his life. He's a stock trader guy in a float tank, and they all got this message. Everything's perfect, which makes no sense whatsoever. And it's this idea. It's all experience, and it's all this thing where we're learning, and things are manifesting, and doesn't really, you're not really going to change anything. This kind of thing where we come into the world, we plan all this kind of stuff, and that's where we have the random things we think are random near-death experiences, UFO experiences. And so when you start talking to experiencers and you say, do you think you're on a mission? They'll go, yeah, I think they sent me here. I came here to do something. And it's not random at all. This is like a play, the same as the guys from 1895. You see the absurd stuff from 1896 or 1895. You had the crash. Remember the crash in Aurora, Texas, or whatever it was?
I know the one you
mean. And okay, windmill. So you go back and read the article, and you see how absurd this is. You read the article, and you see that the thing hit the windmill, this UFO, at 8 to 10 miles an hour. And the whole thing fell apart, and the guy died. It's like, no, this doesn't make any sense. This is crazy. In that year, it made sense. But now it's a fender bender. There's no way the craft's going to fall apart. Or the Roswell crash. So the Roswell crash, you tell how the stories. The craft was really hard, and they could take a sledgehammer, and they couldn't bend it, and they couldn't cut it, and they couldn't burn it with stuff. But it hits the ground, and it shatters like a wine glass drop from the top of the Empire State Building. Well, how's it falling apart like that? And then you get this idea of Tim Taylor, who is this top guy. And I actually met this guy. This is the guy, one of the black budget program guys out of NASA. And he says it's the gifting field. He calls it the gifting field. And then they talk to Bob Bigelow. Hey, Bob Bigelow, do you believe Roswell's real? And he said, well, yeah, Roswell's real, but China has one, and Russia has one, and there's one in South America, and I think they're seeding them. They're dropping them. And this is the whole idea. The whole idea changes, that this phenomena is sort of gradually awakening us, but it's not giving us the answer. It's not doing the left brain thing. We want the left brain thing. We want you to land, give us the message, tell us what's going on, give us the technology, and then get the hell out of here. And that they're doing the right brain thing. They're doing the symbols. They're doing you got to figure it out. Every crop circle is different. Every alien is different. Every UFO sighting is different. They're all different. And they're trying to get you to figure out what's going on. And that's the whole thing, because without awe and curiosity, what they're doing is they're creating awe and curiosity. Because unless you have awe and curiosity, you're not going to investigate. There's no scientific investigation if you've got it all figured out. It's when you get these oddities, it's like, why is this happening? And then you start working, and that's when you discover the Nobel Prize type stuff.
It makes me think this, or at least ask you this question, right? What, in your best way that you can describe it, how would you model this experience, this Earth, this universe, whatever we want to call it? Is it a computer game like The Matrix, where we're injected into play levels just to do something and then go back? How would you, where do you think it is? What do you think it is?
Okay, the computer game where I disagree with that is there's nobody putting us in. There's nobody running the show. It's we are God. Like if you see Jill Bolte Taylor. Jill Bolte Taylor was this neuroanatomist from Harvard University. She has a left brain hemorrhage. Her left brain completely shuts down. And
Wow.
her left brain is the fear center, the amygdala thing. And the left brain is on there and says, trouble, you better do something. You better do something. We're in trouble here. We're having a stroke. You better do something. And then the left brain goes offline and she goes into the female right brain. And the female right brain is saying, wow, this is so cool. Wow, how many neuroanatomists can actually watch themselves have a stroke? And then left brain comes back online. You got to do something. We're in trouble. And then she goes back and she said, I was as big as the universe. And this is this whole concept. Are we the universe? Are we God? You always want to do the separation. There's us and there's the sparks of the divine and stuff like that. No, it all may be that we're all the same thing. We're all the water in the ocean. And so the way I look at it is it starts that we are manifesting the universe, that the universe starts very small, almost like the Big Bang type thing. And God, the God is us. It's all the thing. And when the vibration starts, when God starts to vibrate, that's when the illusion starts. Because that's all physical matter is. It's vibration. It's vibrating at a very low level. The aliens are vibrating at a higher level. The vibration starts and the illusion starts. And God cannot know, we cannot, if we're God, we cannot know ourselves without the opposite. So if you have a God is in a movie theater, if you have one where the movie is going, oh, I love you, Paul. Oh, I love you. I love your kids. You love your wife.
Great film.
And then God gets the popcorn and says, this is beautiful. I'm getting out of here. And he goes and watches Star Wars next door, where it's like, the stuff is going. And that's what this whole deal is. It's this play, almost like Shakespeare. I hated Shakespeare. And then now I quote Shakespeare all the time. All the world's a stage. All the men and women are but actors. They have their entrances and exits, and each man plays many roles. That's exactly what happens. Because if you play King Henry VIII in grade 12 high school, it does not mean you are now King Henry VIII. You are not King Henry VIII. You are playing King Henry VIII on a stage. We are not. It's the basic bottom line of mystical teaching is remember who you actually are. You are not the puppet on the stage. You are watching, and you may be playing 20 plays at the same time. And you are the spirit. You are this one thing, and it's all the rest of it is just this illusion thing where you're learning things and you're making. But the world is getting grander. It's getting more complex as we go on. So it starts as a very simple type of thing, where in the Newton thing, where the people learn to make rocks, then they learn to make little plants, and then they learn to make animals, and they learn to just and everybody's creating, everybody's making this stuff out of consciousness and coming up with new ideas. So even if you have the thing about what happens after you die, I go as far as to say, whatever you think is going to happen after you die, that there may not be an actual, we want to believe that there's something out there. The moon is behind us when we're not looking. There is heaven. There is reincarnation. There is the spirit world with souls in groups and stuff. And that may be true. But when you start looking at the UFO experience, you see all different things. The Mission Rama group has the most dramatic UFO sightings of any group that there is. There's 25,000. If you take a look at their things, I say to people, I absolutely defy you to go to the Mission Rama, and they've had a lot of bizarre experiences with aliens, and find one that has a reptilian or a mantid or a gray. Does not exist. Theirs are all, they're very religious type of group. They're Latinos. There's very religious, Roman Catholic, and they pray and they meditate and they raise their vibration and stuff like that. And they have these encounters, and that's what you get. You get these sort of very positive things. If you're in fear, you start to get the gray things. And Kit Green even says that. And Kit Green is the guy that if you have an experience in the U.S. government, if you're a general and you suddenly have an experience where you've been taken on board a ship, they send you to Kit Green. He's former CIA, head of the weird desk, and that's what he says. People all see whatever they want to see, whatever their impression are, and that's the whole thing. We can create our afterlife what's going on here. We're manifesting this, and we don't realize because it's happening so slow that we are part of what we're doing. We're all
Well, that's interesting what you've just said there. So I'm going to model it this way, right, based on what you said. Let's just say the universe doesn't exist until the Big Bang, right? So there's something somewhere, our spiritual field, or whatever you want to call it, whatever that is, that creates the universe. The universe grows, we live in it, we've embodied or indwelt it, whatever you want to call. Then we die, but we're still within it, this bubble. That's weird, isn't it? Because it means you can't then get back to the point of origin.
well, but again, you're again separating. You're saying we are
Mm.
in this thing. No, there's no we, and it's all the same sort of thing. Like you can actually, I'm going to do this event within the next 6 months. And this is this 5-methoxy DMT. Do you know this whole thing? So you have
Hmm.
DMT, which you see the little elves and stuff, and all the elves are
Yeah,
different.
machine
The
elves.
same as the
Yeah.
aliens are all different. I'm doing a lecture on a cruise ship. I'm going to show the Greys. People say, oh, the Greys, they're Greys, great. Hey, yeah, just take the Greys. And you start showing the Greys. Betty Hill's gray, Whitley Strieber's gray. Do you think they look the same? They're not even close. And then I
Mm.
put Betty Andreassen's gray. Then I put this gray, the gray, all these different grays, and they all look different. And so that's the thing is that the universe is all going to be structured where it's all happening, but there may not even be the Big Bang. There may be this sense. So the 5-methoxy DMT is this event where you go back to source, where you're in this source where all there is light. There is no physical structure. There are no nouns. There's nothing like that. And that's the whole thing. So you can still go back to that form, but we've created this sort of thing where the vibration has been lowered. We're all lower, but there's no God that's creating it. It's all one thing that's growing on itself, and it doesn't have a beginning. It doesn't have an end. And we even know that now. This idea about conscious that time is an illusion. So if there's only here and now, and time is an illusion, space is an illusion with the spooky action at distance. If time and then everything is here and now. There is no future. There's no past. And that's the kind of stuff where Jim Semivan says this is the problem the president has. How do you go out and tell people this kind of stuff? Like Jim Semivan says, there does not appear to be any out there. And I say, Jim Semivan got the briefing. It's time to listen. What the hell's he talking about? There does not appear to be any out there. And people say, well, we've got crafts, we've got bodies. And Jim Semivan will say, because we've got crafts and bodies doesn't mean we know what we're dealing with. And it's like even the idea where in the late 19th century, the guy who invented Stanford University, started Stanford University, his brother was into seances. And he has these seances and he was in Australia. And in one seance, a turtle drops out of the ceiling. And this turtle's alive, and he keeps it in his garden for his life, and the turtle dies. And it's now at Stanford University in a collection of apportations and manifestations, things that popped out of these
Mm.
seances. And they got a collection of these things. So the question is that an extraterrestrial turtle? No, it's coming from whatever. It's all
Mm.
manifesting from the same thing. But once we start separating, there's a field, there's a Big Bang, there's this, and we start again. We're going back to these nouns. It's like this and that, and it's this thing. It's all a verb. It's all alive. Even your body. People don't realize your body, and this is part of my idea, is to tell people how complex things are. Your body has 1,000,000 cells a second dying in the body. So your body is different from second to second to second. People say the brain. Oh, it's just the brain. The consciousness is the brain. I say it's got two sides of the brain. Why is there two sides to the brain? Why is there these two sides of the brain? And then you say, well, it's just neurons. And there's 100 billion neurons, and they all work together. And there's this corpus callosum between 300 million axonal fibers that connect these things. You say, you actually think this is happening by accident? And now we actually know it gets more complex. There's 5,000 different cells in the brain. And it's like, the more you look at anything, the more complex it gets. And it's the same thing in the UFO field. Everybody thinks it's all, the government's got this one little piece of the puzzle. They've got these crafts, they're flying the crafts around, they're going to tell us whatever. And I can absolutely, not 99%, but pretty close, I can tell you that's not what's it. They have no clue what's going on. And that's this whole thing where if you, Jimmy, even Danny Sheehan was shut up. I think one of the things he said that he shouldn't have said, he talked about the craft. And I got this when I wrote the book with the people who've been inside the craft, where Chris Bledsoe would say to me, I went to the craft. I said, Chris, you flew the craft? He said, yeah, I flew the craft. He said, did the government ever ask you how the craft flew? He said, sure. They brought me into a general, U.S. Air Force general, and I showed him I told him how to fly the craft. And he'd go to the craft, and the thing was 30 feet across, and then he'd go inside the craft, and it was like the size of a football stadium. And then he'd look outside. It was like 30 feet. You'd look inside, it was the size of a football. there's no way we got this kind of stuff. And that's what Lukatsky said. When Lukatsky gave the interview, this guy ran the DIA program. When Lukatsky gave the interview, he talked about this book. He wrote the book and he said, I can confirm it's been approved for approval that we have a craft and we've been inside the craft. And there was a senator involved during the discussion. So we've been inside, and of course they're saying, well, what's inside the craft? And he said, I can't. I have to get that approved by the government. I have to put it there. I have to get it approved, and then I can release it. It has to be written down and approved by the government. But then he says, but if you knew that, you'd realize that the rest of this story is totally primitive. And when I hear that, I'm going, this is exactly the thing. Or Jim Semivan said, how do you tell the people, at one point he says, how do you tell the people that they may be immaterial, that there's no material world?
There was my next question to you. It's opening the Pandora's box, so that's probably why the disclosure won't officially happen, because if they do, they're opening a door where they get a shed load of questions, and then it's just, paradigm's over.
Sure, that's what Semivan says. There's a million questions. You think it's just the next question, but it just leads to the next question. And the president doesn't know. The president's supposed to be the guy who has the answer to everything. And you can't have him going, I no idea. Or if they know, then you say there's no time and space. These beings are us. They're we're all one and stuff like that. And that the economy is going to collapse because the economy is built on this materialistic me versus you separation. It's a game. It's a competition and stuff like that. You can't go there. And you don't want to give it to the Russians because everybody's trying to figure this thing out and they're trying to weaponize this stuff. How do you figure? Because that's what Skinwalker Ranch, I maintain, they still maintain it was a UFO. No. They went to Skinwalker Ranch because there was 4 bulls inside a trailer that was locked. So how do you get 4 bulls inside a trailer that's locked? And if you're a defense intelligence agency and you're in the Middle East and you're reading about the woman coming in and she puts her groceries away and leaves the bags on the kitchen counter in the kitchen, and then she comes back into the kitchen and the groceries are all back in the bag. If you're a U.S. Air Force, if you're a U.S. intelligence, you go, wow, would we love to do that? Holy cow. Or the 3 guys, the special forces guys who get this voice in their head. And what I heard they were told was, leave, you are not welcome. And they're just petrified. These special forces guys, they'd leave the ranch and they don't want to come back. They're just totally petrified. And can you imagine? They would say, man, can we do that? We can go into Putin and talk to him and say, hey, Putin, this is God. We want you to surrender. We want you. And they would just look at this. And they actually wrote a book on apports and manifestations, things that appear and disappear and stuff. I wrote this. The book is called Weird. And that's what it is. It's like this weird stuff they're doing. Why do they drop stuff out of the ceiling? Because you go, what the heck is going on here? And you start to explore and like, why are these coins appearing and stuff like that? And basically what it comes down to is this idea that they're doing this stuff to get our attention, but it gets these people, these intelligence people, who are trying to figure out how does this work? And that's where the investigation comes from, and that's why the Russians are working on it, Chinese are working on it, and they're gonna try to weaponize this stuff because they're left brain ego, they're into fear and all this kind of stuff. Whereas the other side says, it really doesn't matter. We're on this spiritual.
Here's a question: and I know you will have answered this before, or even asked the question to yourself before. Does it mean that all this is pointless?
Some people say, yeah, it's pointless. It's basically it's like a game. It's like a big game that we've decided to play, and in the end, we all go back to source. Or people say we go back to source. I don't think that. I think it just keeps getting bigger and more grand. It's the old idea about the Titanic. I mean, you say you get the message: your kid's in trouble on the earth. You want to go back and help? No, I'm here on Miami. I'm in. Hawaii, and I'm drinking Mai Tais, and I'm drinking Mai Tais for the next 5 billion years. And I always say to people, how long do you think you can sit on the beach in Hawaii and drink Mai Tais? You're going to get bored after a while, and you go, let's go back and do it again. So it's this sort of a game type thing where, it's all this thing where it's all happening, and it's a weird version. It's a completely different version of the world than people are being taught.
It's hard to reconcile. It's hard to reconcile knowing, right, let's just take all paranormal stuff away. You and I are living lives. We're reproducing, doing whatever going about our daily lives. We live, we die. Okay, that makes sense logically, linearly, everything. When you apply the paranormal phenomenon and everything we've learned, so all the stuff you've said tonight mirrors exactly what Steve Mera, Barry Fitzgerald et al. have told me. it makes this life seem pointless. Absolutely. To me. Am I being
I,
cynical or am I being realistic?
well, in a way, you can look at the whatever way you want. You can look at it like this is an exciting game, and or you could say, well, it's totally like this idea of free will always comes up. Is it free
Yeah.
will? And most of the literature will say no, free will is still there. That you have these sort of basic principles of what you want to do, but you can sort of shift it. Almost like when you predict the future, you can't the farther out you predict the future, the less accurate it is, because free will is still in play on this sort of thing.
Hmm.
But it does give you the idea that everything's eternal, and you can create whatever you want. So this idea where now I've gotten this idea of where heaven and hell. I mean, it may be whatever you create, because you get these different views. Michael Newton has this view that you go into the spirit world, and we go to school and we learn new lessons, and we look at crystals and see our past lives and future lives and stuff like that. And then you get a guy like what's his name? He's a Roman Catholic, Dominican priest who talks to people who haven't crossed over, and they're in this sort of a purgatory world. And he's got 500 of them. So it's not like these people he's making this stuff up. He's got this thing,
Mm.
and he's helping these people move into whatever it is. He doesn't define what it is, but it's the whole idea is if we're creating this world, we could be creating the afterlife. It could be like a million different afterlives. And I think that's the basic principle that I've found, is that everybody's looking for patterns, that everything's the same. And basically, the pattern in the universe is everything is different. No two things are the same. And that's when Lakatsky said that. Lakatsky said that about UFO sightings. He said, we've got 200,000 sightings in the database. And he said, it's weird. He said, it's like driving down the road and every car is different. And that's the whole idea. Every UFO sighting is different, which is completely contrary to what everybody thinks. And so if you get all the sightings different, and then I go, oh, that's what's going on. And because I had the people flying the craft. And I remember the guy told him he put his hands on the panel. And then I'm talking to my friend. Her name is Candace Powers out of Boulder. And she said, oh, I think I flew the craft too, but I think it was a dream. I said, everything's a dream. Just tell me, what do you have? She says, well, I'm sitting there. I got this ball. I got my hand over top of this ball, and I move my hand over this ball, and I can fly the craft. But whatever I'm thinking. And I'm thinking, well, no panel? No, there's no panel. And I'm thinking, well, that's kind of weird. He had a panel, and you had this ball. And then Chris Bledsoe tells me, I said, well, how'd you fly? He said, well, there was this pedestal in the middle of the craft. And there was this sort of a beehive type thing. It looked like a black plastic thing on top. It was like a beehive. And I put my hand on there, and then everything started to happen. And suddenly I was using my mind, and I was flying the craft down the Cape Fear River and stuff. And I'm going, what? But when Lakatsky said they're all different, I went, that is weird. And I go back and look, sure enough, 36 people, nobody touched the same thing. One put their hands on the end of a chair. One put they had a little joystick. Everybody did something different. I said, what are the chances that 36 people all had the same thing? The craft is alive, it's conscious, and you touch the craft, you become one with the craft, and you amalgamate with the craft, and whatever you think is what the craft does, but nobody touched the same thing. And that's this unique thing where you start to realize, like, man, this is way more complex than what I thought it was. And then the other important thing that they say with the people tying the craft is the whole thing about this idea that you're creating it. So in remote viewing, if you're doing a remote viewing, I say to you, okay, here's the target, 453709, and you go, okay, I'm at the target. The person doesn't say, hang on, I'm flying to the target, I'll be there in a minute. There is no time and space. You're sort of like going within yourself. And that's what you hear when I started looking at these stories. And unfortunately, I learned these questions after I did the 36 people. So I can't go back and re-ask the question because now it's public. But what they would say is the one woman, or Ron Johnson is one guy. He's a Mormon guy. And they said, Ron, where would you like to go? And he said, I'd like to see the Milky Way from a distance. And they said, okay, Ron, this is going to be very intense. It's going to be a G-force, very intense for about 1 second. Ron, go within yourself. Imagine it in your head. When you can imagine it in your head, we will go there. And he said it was intense force. And he said the window was there. He looked out, there was a Milky Way off in a distance, which would be 50 to 70,000 light years in 1 second, which means if that's true, there's something wrong with our ideas of time and space. And there's another woman, I asked her, I said, what did he say to you? She said, me and my friend, there was 2 women were taken on board, and they were flying the craft, and they said, it's within yourself. Go within yourself. When you can imagine where you want to go, we will go there. And then push the button. You push the button. She said, we're on the far side of the universe, other side of the universe, instantaneously. And that's this whole thing. Is there an out there? And the example I will show to sort of define that is people think there's an out there, and the consciousness is in the brain. If you have an out-of-body experience or near-death experience, you float above your body. You're above your body and you're looking back down at your body, and you say, is the consciousness in Paul's head? And you go, no, the consciousness is floating around in the room here. The head, the body, is in the consciousness. Then you take the consciousness and float over to the window, and you look out the window and look at the stars and the planets, and you say, are the stars and planets out there, or are they in the consciousness? And that's this whole thing about when you get people who do out-of-body experience, they can go wherever they want instantaneously. And this is the whole thing. Is it all within us? If there's no time and space, it's all within us. We are going within ourselves. We aren't going anywhere. It's we maybe created this world inside our space. It's all connected, where we say, oh, we'll have stars, and we'll have planets, and we'll have this, and we'll have that, and we'll create this, and we'll create that. But it's all being created within the universe. Or I say, if there's no time and space, how many universes can you put on the head of a pin? This is the whole idea. People just
I can give you an answer to that. It's 54.
Just say, okay, I believe there's no time and space, and then go back talking about how long it takes to go to a star system. You have it one way or the other. Either there's no time and space, and it's all here and now, or there's time and space. And it appears quantum physics is moving us more towards the idea it's all here, it's all now. Yes. And that's the lesson we got to learn, is that the world is completely different than what you think it is. You think all leaves on the tree are different. All leaves on the tree are completely separate. Every single snowflake is different. Every single human is different. Even identical twins have different fingerprints. They have different hair patterns. Everything is different. That is the pattern. And yet everything is connected. Everything is one thing, which is the ultimate message of all paranormal, all mystical teaching, all UFO teaching: oneness. It's all one thing.
Have you pondered this? I'm sure you will have, but I will ask it now. If we're all one thing, is there the possibility that that one thing is me, or it's you, and I'm a figment to you, or you're a figment to me? So I am God, everything around me is my creation, or you're God and everything around you is your creation. Exactly. Am I real, or are you real? Do you understand that?
Yeah, it's hard to distinguish. That's true. I mean, that could be. But that's the thing, is when you get Jill Bolte Taylor, who's a neuroanatomist, worked on brains at Harvard University her whole life, when she says, I was as big as the universe, I was one with all that is. And that's this whole idea, is that whatever it is, it's coming from our perspective. We have this idea. And yet when you get psychedelics, or when you shut down, that's why you have people who have bad near-death experiences, the ego's hanging on. Or in psychedelics, I had that whole thing where they would play this game with me, where I was always afraid to go in. I hated doing it. And because the ego is going to get taken out. This idea that I'm separate from everything else. And what they would do is I'd have a couple of events, maybe 5 events, where suddenly I was in hell, like literally in hell. It was like just this weird, and kept going. And I'm going, oh no, like, and it wouldn't stop. One was these things were coming at me, and they're making these buzzing noises. And I was in this, and I tried to stop it, and I couldn't stop it. And I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then I suddenly realized, I said, this is hell. I did this. I have nobody else to blame for myself, but this is the way it's going to be for an eternity. And like that, it was gone. It was like just surrender. And that's why I put in the beginning of my book of the psilocybin school, surrender is the rule. Believe me, surrender is the only rule.
Yeah,
once that the thing surrenders, then you move into the thing. And that's why you have the trauma events. When you have people who have trauma events, high sicknesses, near-death experiences and stuff, there's a surrender, and you pop into the field. And suddenly those people are psychic. When they come back, they've ripped the veil. Like they had a thing on Brazilian mediums. I think it was like 80% of them had child abuse issues. And that's the whole thing. If you're a child and you're being abused, sexually harassed or whatever, and you're trying to shut out the world, you're trying to shut down that physical world, and suddenly, boom, you're talking to your dead grandmother. And that's what's happening, is everything's in the field, all the information is in the field, and it's our ability to access the field, but we're in the field, and it's this bizarre thing. But how do you explain that to people? Jim Semivan brought up the same thing as me. I bring up the fact that in the United States of America, 53% of people in the United States of America are reading at a grade 6 level. Jim Semivan also brings up the fact that if you take a map of the United States and you show it to American population, 2/3 of that population cannot identify where Miami is on the map. And then I describe the fact that you go on Google, You look up attention span of a 2-year-old. You'll see the attention span of a 2-year-old is between 4 and 6 minutes. Look up, Google search, the attention span of somebody on the internet, 8 seconds. So you've got basically, you're trying to get across this idea. You're the president, me, you trying to get across this idea to people. You're talking to people who are reading at a grade 6 level, who are telling you what's going on Twitter. They're the experts on Twitter, and they don't read books, and they can't identify Miami on a map, and they're scrolling, scroll. And you say, stop scrolling. Think about that. Like when Jim Semivan says there does not appear to be any out there, people say we need to connect the dots. And I say, you show me where the damn dots are. That's what he said. You show me where there's no dots. There's nothing. And then stop scrolling and listen to what these high level people are saying. And you start to realize like, wow, we're not even close. And that's what they told me in my psychedelic experience. They said, you think you know what's going on. You haven't got a clue what's going on. And that was my 2016 experience where they said, you think it's this, it's this. You think it's this, it's this. You think it's this, it's this. And that's why I try to tell people now, you think you know what's going on. Believe me, you have not got a clue. And the more you look at the UFO phenomenon, the more complex it gets. The same as even simple things. We say, oh, there's an amoeba. They say, example, there's an amoeba. It's a single cell. It's the simplest cell with a body on it. And what's the big deal? It's an amoeba. It reproduces. An amoeba cell has 12 quadrillion cells. That's 12 with 18 zeros after it, of atoms in it. And all the atoms will go at the right dimension, the right time, the right place, and they'll create. And an amoeba has up to 670 billion base pairs, and we have 3 billion. So you take a look and you say that this thing is recreating, and it's recreating 670 billion base pairs without error. And we just say, oh, it's just an amoeba. Don't worry about it. It's just an amoeba. It reproduces. And it's like the more you look at it, the more complex and more complex and more complex it gets.
Yeah,
and that's
it's a fractal within a fractal sort of thing.
It's dragging us down this rabbit hole. And the more I guarantee you, the more you look at the UFO phenomena, the weirder it gets. It does not answer anything. And that's where I say that if you listen to Jim Semivan or Lekatsky says the same thing. He said, I will be long dead and gone, and Colm Kelleher will be long dead and gone, and most of the people watching this will be long dead and gone, and they'll still be trying to figure this thing out. Same as Jim Semivan says. You think, I can assure you, the government does not know. They know it's real. They know the phenomenon is real. But other than that, this thing is completely beyond us.
Is it a never-ending mystery because a good game would be a never-ending mystery so that the players, so to speak, are always entertained?
Yeah. There's even, I was raised a Lutheran, and there's a seance that was done, claimed that they came in contact with Martin Luther. And Martin Luther's this whole thing about the mystery. So Martin Luther was asked the question. We always say, well, what are the aliens? Come down and tell us what's going on. Because that's left brain. That's us going to Iraq and saying, we're here to bring you freedom, democracy, Jesus, and McDonald's. And then they point guns and say, get the hell out of our country. Who do you think you are? That's our left brain.
Bloody rocks.
We're going to give a lecture. So they ask Martin Luther, but they asked him not the question, why don't the aliens come and tell us what's going on? They said, why doesn't God get off his fat rear end and come down and tell us what's going on? And he said, because doubt is part of the equation. If the human soul were to know the answer to everything, it would grow wings and fly away and leave the body behind. God is the harvester, we are the sowers, and the plow is to stay in the ground. And that's what he's saying. Doubt is what makes it run. The same thing as awe and curiosity is what makes us, and that's what makes it exciting. That's what the difference between a theater where everybody's just saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. And it's the same line all the time. And this thing where you don't know what's going on, what's going to happen next and stuff like that. That's part of the thing that we're creating this sort of thing, and we're learning lessons, but it's getting more complex. We're creating this world of these movies and stuff like that, and it just becomes grander and more magnificent as we go along. And it started as a very sort of simple thing, and that's messages that the experiences are talking about, the fact that we are here and we're coming in, and next time we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and it's all a game where we're trying to help out, and we're in this weird world where we believe it's about us, that we are the only thing, and it's about the idea where you spend your whole life trying to grab onto things that you can't grab onto, that will pass away. And
yeah. Now, before we move into some of your books and some of the topics there, because I have a lot of questions on those, I just want to ask you this question. Knowing what you know about how you think this whole thing works, are you happy with it?
Oh, that's a good question. I say the illusion is very strong. You get sucked back in the illusion all the time. And then you suddenly, oh shoot, I'm back into, worrying about money and all this kind of stuff and stuff like that. In terms of that, but to me, it's exciting. It was always, to me, it was the idea. The second night I saw it, I said, I don't know what's going on, but somebody's got to know what's going on. And I was very good. I was very good as a kid as a chess player. I was playing at a very high level. And the reason I stopped was I didn't want to lose. I didn't want to get into a situation where there was somebody who could beat me.
Oh,
So to me, it's always been like a chess game. It's always, to me, is like a game of trying to figure this thing out. So that's what I said when I think was, I don't know what's going on, but somebody's got to know what's going on. And I started this pursuit. I went after the Canadian government. What did the Canadian government know? I went after Dr. Eric Walker, the highest level source anybody ever had. We went after him for 8 years. Then I went after the president. And when I got the presidential archives looking for Walker's files, that's when I said, hey, president's the most powerful guy in the world. He's got to know what's going on here. And I said to the Truman archivist, I said, hey, so what do you got on the president on UFOs? And he goes like, we got 20 pages. And I go, 20 pages? It's like, that's all. It's like, he's got to know. He's got to be piles of stuff. And then I went to archives, and then I started to realize that the experiencers are the ones that had the answers. They're the ones that are actually interacting with the intelligence. So I started working with the experiences. So to me, it's been a game in that way. And I get these revelations, which I just love. Like I had one last night where I walk about 5 hours a day. So that's my way of what I call a contact modality. You have different ways to get in the field. You can use psychedelics, meditation, hypnosis, trauma, dancing, fasting. There's all these ways to get in the field and stuff. And I use walking. So I'm listening to Mike Cleland. I'm listening to him do an interview with Sherry Wild, who is probably one of the best UFO stories there are in terms of what's going on. And he's talking to her, and they're talking about body wounds, about people have triangles. And Jim Semivan's all upset. He had this thing happen 30 years, and he just did an interview, and he's still upset. He says, I'm still mad. It was a violation of my human rights. And why did they injure me? Why did they injure my wife and stuff like that? And I'm thinking to myself, oh, come on, Jim, you should know that. You're a smart guy. I mean, they're just telling you. They're leaving a mark on you because they want you not to say, oh, that was a dream. Because you think, oh, that's a weird thing happened last night. It was a dream. And then you look at your arm, oh my God, it's real. It actually happened because there's a triangle on your wrist. And that's what it is. So I said to myself, oh, come on, Jim, it's an alarm clock. And so I keep walking. I walk around the corner and I'm listening to them talking. And then Sherry Wild says, I can talk to Daw anytime I want. So Mike Clown says, oh, okay, I got a question for him. He said, hey, ask Daw, why am I so obsessed with owls? Why are you so obsessed with owls? And then she says, it got your attention, didn't it? And he says, well, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's an alarm clock. And when he said that, I went, I just thought about that 45 seconds ago. About Jim Semivan. This is an alarm clock. And that's what the phenomenon is. It's an alarm clock. It's waking you up and saying, no, wake up.
But did it wake you up to happiness? So are you more happy now that you know things versus your younger self?
Well, I'm farther ahead. I mean, I may feel very honored and privileged that I got to play this game. I tell people this is like you guys are soccer. So you're World Cup. This is the World Cup. We call it the Super Bowl. This is the World Cup. This is the Super Bowl. Not only did you get to see it, because people will say the Super Bowl is $11,000 for a ticket. People say, look at this, look at my ticket stub. I was at the Super Bowl. And I say, you and I playing this game, not only do we know there's a Super Bowl, we are in the stadium. Not only are we in the stadium, we are on the field. You may be the water boy, you may be the goalie, the striker, you may be whatever, but you're playing the game. You got to realize this is the biggest story that will ever hit the world. And I got to play in the game. So to me, I go, wow, this is so cool. I got this honor. Because when I first saw it, because I was raised very religious. I was supposed to be a minister when I grew up. So when I saw it, I thought, there may be miracles in the Bible. There's no miracles anymore. When I saw that the first time, I went, there's miracles. There are actually miracles. There are these weird things. And I was just floored. I just felt so honored that I'd gotten to see it. Because as I said, it was like buying a ticket to the lottery, but I'm not going to win. There's no way, because I'd never had any paranormal experiences, anything like that. As everybody else will see it, I'm not going to see anything. But when I saw it, I went, so to me, it's always been this honor, this privilege, and this game thing. So the odd time, like the last night when I get this synchronicity about the alarm clock, this is the basic message that they want. These are alarm clocks that are waking people up. Then I go, wow, it's like, I won another game. It's like, to me, that's what it is. But it can be very frustrating in terms, especially when you get dragged back into the illusion of the physical world, and then you get depressed, and then you go, oh shit, I forgot again. Like, oh, and then you try to get yourself out of that again. You try to go back into the world of oneness and think about this kind of stuff. And you know better, Grant. You should know better how the thing works. Why are you so down on what's happening, like the American political system? And I remember at one point I got to download it. It's going to be in my next disclosure book, where I get frustrated that we're not getting anywhere. We're not really convincing anybody and stuff like that. And then at one point, this comes to me as clear as day. It said, "What are you worrying about? Why are you so concerned? Don't worry. We know how to land the plane." And this is the whole idea that this phenomena is coming. And it's going to happen. Doesn't matter what you do. They know they've done maybe disclosure on 1,000 different planets. They know exactly what they're doing. First, they send in the wooden ships. Then they're going to send in the Foo Fighters. Then they're going to send in the green fireballs. Then they're going to send in the Adamski crafts. Then they're going to do the crop circles. Then they're going to do mutilations. And then they're going to do this. And they know exactly what they're going to do. And that's almost like there was Terence McKenna's brother, Dennis McKenna, was doing psilocybin in Brazil. And at one point, he has the experience, the same thing, the frustrating experience. It's like, oh my God, we're destroying the world, and oh my, the rainforest and stuff like that. And then he says, his voice comes in his head. He said, really? Do you really think we would allow this to happen? Don't worry. You monkeys just think you're running the world. And it's the same idea. It's like you get all frustrated with the illusion, and you don't realize the fact that it's all under control. It's this idea that Nick Cook's wife had. Everything is perfect. Everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. But we want to be in the illusion. And you're actually going to see, if you watch my Twitter, there's going to be a post coming up on Twitter. So I post this thing about the world is perfect. And I have all these witnesses from different things, modalities, near-death experiences, and shared near-death experiences, and float tanks, and people doing meditation and stuff. And they all got this message. Everything's perfect. So I put this out, and at the same time, I put a quote by Jim Semivan. I post them at the same time. Jim Semivan, where it says, the fact that this is, he talked to high-level officials, and they say the story is indigestible. And of course, everybody's in the fear world. So everybody said, I knew it, and there's nothing we can do. It's game over. They're running the show, and all this sort of stuff. So there's this fear thing. And then at the same time, I read above it, I posted the fact that everything was perfect. So when you take a look on my Twitter, you'll see on the one that's perfect, there was no retweets. There was 1,200 people viewed it. On the one with Jim Semivan, where it's indigestible, were all hundreds of comments about, oh, it's game over and all this sort of stuff. And that's not what Jim Semivan said. What he was saying is indigestible is the fact that this thing is so complex, there's no way you can tell the story because these people are reading at a grade 6 level. But and I had I don't know, last time it was 70 retweets. 25,000 people had read this thing. And you see that fear motivates. Is everybody gets, and I get swept into it as well. You get swept into the fear because it gets your emotions going, and then you have to stop. You got to say, okay, you should know better, Grant. Come on, and then you try to drag yourself back into that world. So it's this up and down thing, but that's the way it works. It's like it's not what cards are dealt you, it's how you play your cards.
It's how you play. Exactly right. Let it go. You're not in control. What will be will be. All those classic cliches, but they are true.
And when you die, it's going to be like, wow, that was a ride. That was a real wild life I had. Even if you've heard,
I won't be dying, Grant. I'm living forever. Sorry.
Yeah. If you want to know how the world works, one of the guys, it's called The Ride. Bill Hicks. It's called Bill Hicks The Ride. It's 2 minutes long. It is the most dramatic. He said, life is like a ride at an amusement park. It's like a roller coaster. You get on it, and it's so real. It's not there, but it's so real. You actually think it's real, and you go up and down and round and round, and there's thrills and chills and lots of lights. And he said, and there's people who have been on the ride for a long time, and they say, don't worry, don't get scared. It's just a ride. And he said, and you know what we do with those people? We kill them. Because the people say, what do you mean it's just a ride? What are you telling them it's just a ride? You know how much money we spent on this ride? You take a look at my pile of money. Take a look at the furrows in my brain. How I'm worried and stuff like that. And he's telling this story, and it's exactly the way it is. It's like the thing is a ride, but you get sucked into it, and you don't realize that that's this ride, and it's like this idea that it's all going to be okay, and then when it's over, it's like you died 1,000 times. If you've lived 1,000 lives, you've been killed, you've been murdered, you've been whatever, you've had all these different lives, and when you look back on it, you say, well, that was pretty weird. That was a pretty weird way to die. And you see it as an experience. We all see it as the here and now. We believe there's here and now and stuff like that. And we don't realize that when we get on the other side, we're going to choose. Like, why would people choose to be handicapped and stuff? And you hear it's the biggest line there is. People wanting to get in. And it's this whole idea. We want this experience. We want to do this kind of stuff. And that's why I say to people when they say, we're not coming back, I said, don't worry, you're coming back. There's no way you're not coming back.
Well, you might not have any choice.
Yeah, but you're sending yourself back. That's the idea. Again, this is the idea of separation. We believe there's a God that's making us do this thing, and we're actually the ones that are in charge. That's why when Michael Newton says, when you're in front of the council, they ask you, how did it work out? And you can't say, God made me do this, Hillary made me do this, my mother-in-law, whatever. They say, time out, time out. This is about you. You planned this whole thing. How did it work out for you? That we are the ones that are in charge of this thing, and there's nobody telling us what to do. So we volunteer for these different things, and we can't understand it in this world. Why would you volunteer to be murdered? Why would you volunteer to be abducted? Why would you? But when you're on the side, you understand how it works. Is that we have to do this, we got to do this, and this would be an interesting experience to do. Rather, I've done that before, or this lesson I've had, I want to do something different. And we don't realize that when we're on the side, we understand how the game is played, and we realize that this is all just experience. There is no good and bad. There's just experience, and that you learn more from the bad things than you learn from the good things. And when you're on the other side, you say, I want to learn a lot this time, so I'm going to be handicapped. I'm going to come in and I'm going to pick up some karma. And
that one frightens me. Does it frighten you? Because there's always been something inherent in me about disability, and I don't know why.
In this life, sure, in this life, but I realize that when I die, you're going to go, oh yeah, okay, I see what's going on here. Like you get absolute knowledge. You know how the game is played once you get on the other side. So it bothers me now at this point, but I'm sure on the other side it will be revealing in terms of doing stuff. I mean, I thought I got lucky this time. I mean, how many, I tell people in UFO world, because people are always, frustrated, whatever, say, just remember, you could have been born an untouchable in the streets of Calcutta and spend your days in a junkyard looking for something valuable enough to sell for food for tomorrow. You didn't get that. You got to play in the UFO game. You got to play in this thing where people are going to 500 years going to go, oh, these people are so lucky, man. They actually were there when this thing was happening. They figured it out and stuff like that. And we always want to do the self-pity thing. We want to get out the box of Kleenex and we want to cry. We want to be victims. Everybody wants to be a victim and stuff like that. But when you get past that and you realize, like, no, you chose this thing, that you did this kind of stuff, then you take responsibility, even if it's not your fault, even if someone else did it to you, and until you take responsibility for what is happening to you, you're not going to get cured. You're just going to stay in pity and self, crying and stuff like that. So yeah, it's to me, it's been I felt very lucky, and that's why I say it all balances out. Where people will say, they're into the physical world, and we're going to put people in cages and concentration camps and stuff like that. I said, don't worry. God's got it all. It's all under control. When you get, it's all going to be balanced. You're on this side of the wall this time, and the next time you're going to be on the other side of the wall, and you're going to, this sort of thing. And that's what Jesus said. This whole idea of oneness, the Matthew 25 thing that I remind people of when Jesus says, I was sick and you didn't feed me. I was poor and I was a refugee and you didn't help me and all sorts of stuff. And then the disciples say to him, because they don't understand the oneness thing, they say, Jesus, what's this got to do? When were you ever sick? When were you ever in prison? When were you? And he said, whatever you've done unto the least of these brothers, you've done unto me. This is oneness principle. This actually goes back to the Bible, of this idea of understanding it's all one thing. But in this world that we are, we're because the left brain is running the show. And that's why it gets so angry when I do articles, and talking about the right brain, left brain, and the importance of it, that you'll get all these articles that say, no, it's not true. It's just the brain, just the brain. This is, you're over simplifying it and stuff like that. And then I take a look and I say, so who wrote these articles? And what you see is it's 10 men, 3 women, all scientific, rational, analytical left brains who are saying, you're not cutting it's my ego. You're not going to cut my ego out of there. There's no way. And so you had these defensive articles, and the left brain interpreters inside the brain is this thing that's when you did the split brain experiments, you saw how important this was of these events, of how powerful the brain is, these two sides of the brain in terms of what we're doing, and that the left side is running the world right now. It's very left brain. It's this competition. It's
sphere. Yeah.
The end justifies the means. If you win by cheating, it doesn't really matter if they figure out later on. You still won the cup. You still get there. And that's what it is. Just do it and get away with it and stuff like that. And the right brain is being cut out, but you see this shift sort of to the female brain. This idea of women are allowed to vote, and we're sort of moving slowly into that thing. And yet now it shifts back. So it shifts to the right, shifts to the left. Now we even got a governor running for governor of North Carolina, who actually is winning. He's actually up in the polls, and he says if it's up to him, women aren't going to be allowed to vote. And you're going like, what are you talking about? And you see this shift back and forth, this oneness, but it's basically this right brain versus the female brain, the male brain versus the female brain, this battle. And the female brain is the one that can tap into the universe. All the answers are in the universe. Everything is there. And it's the ability. That's why I wrote the book, Contact Modalities, 70 different ways of getting into the field, getting the answer in the field, getting that material and bringing it back into the physical world. Everything is there. All the answers are there.
On a similar vein, before we enter the Koit zone, and then wrap this up, I want to talk about your book, Inspired, The Paranormal World of Creativity. This one speaks to me a lot, I think. I mean, it fascinates me the most out of all your books, and I like all of the topics you've written on, by the way. I'm a creative myself, right? Yeah. And I always ask the question, where do my songs and animations come from, and all my ideas? Is it my imagination, as Paul, or does this creativity belong somewhere else or to someone else? From that book, where did you put it?
This is the idea that everything's in the field. So everything's in the field, and musicians. I wrote a book called Tuned In: The Paranormal World of Music, and I have no background in music. My father is rolling over his grave laughing that his kid wrote a book on music, and it was this whole idea. I got a message from Chris Bledsoe from the Guardians, the aliens, to say the message is in the music. So the question is, where does the music come from? So I refer to stuff like Paul McCartney, and I refer to the fact that most musicians cannot read and write music. People don't realize that. All the big songs, all the Beatles couldn't read and write music. Neither could the Stones. Neither could Barbra Streisand, and neither could all these people. I have a whole list in my book.
I can't either, and I'm on that list, I think.
And so you ask is, so the question is, where does the song come from? And you ask a musician, where's it come from? And they go, I don't know. I just sit there and I wait, and then it comes. It's like it just comes, and it's like, and so you get Paul McCartney when I go through the songs that came in download. In my book Tuned In, I have about 150 songs that came in dreams. I have 150 songs that came in under 5 minutes. Because this is what you're looking at. You're looking at the paranormal stuff. Like, why is this weird stuff happening? And how did they get it so fast? And Paul McCartney, like, let it be. So you get this whole thing where you see the song, and it's always an A-side song. It's never a B-side song. It's always the top songs that came in these downloads. In fact, I can tell when I listen to music on the radio, I hear a song and I go, that's a download song. And I go and look, and sure enough, I look up the song under song facts, and I look, and sure enough, it came to the guy in a dream and stuff like that. So Paul McCartney tells his stories. He had 3 of them that came in dreams. The one was yesterday, where he wakes up in the middle of the night, and the whole thing is, it's not like an ordinary dream. The guys will describe the fact that it comes completely done. Like, there's no weirdness about it. You just got to remember all the notes and do this sort of stuff. So he's there, and then he runs around, as you know, and he's telling people, like, have you heard this song before? You heard this song? And they go, no, I never heard that song before. And then he composes a song, and it's the most produced song of the 20th century. And it came in a dream in the middle of the night. There was a piano. He quickly sort of got the notes and stuff like that of how it was going to do. And then he has the one, No Regrets. I think it's called No Regrets. And he has a dream. He's playing with the Rolling Stones, and he's playing this song, and then he wakes up and he goes, that was a fantastic song they played. Yeah, it was fantastic. They never, Rolling Stones never played that song. And he records it, and he says, I never told Mick Jagger that I got it in a dream, because he would have wanted royalties. And the other one he gets is the famous song that everybody knows, Let It Be. When in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And everybody thinks it has to do with Mother Mary in the Bible. And it's not. His mother died when he was 14 years old of cancer, and it was 18 years old, and he was on drugs, and he just got divorced, and the Beatles were breaking up, and Yoko Ono had come in and was pissing everybody off, and he was in a real traumatic state, and he's troubled, and he goes and he falls asleep, and his mother comes to him, and she says, Paul, it'll be okay, let it be. And that's where it comes. When in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And so I do this whole thing of these musicians. It's the same idea. The songs are in the field, and people will tell you this sort of thing. Like the guy that did the moonwalk guy. Um, anyway, one of the top guys. He said he was afraid to put his name on the thing because he didn't compose the stuff. Or I go into really weird ones. If you've ever heard, his name is escaping me, but there's a guy that shows how powerful the mind is and music and stuff like that. This is a guy that plays honky tonk music, and he's in the United States, and he's the guy that says, "I listen to two symphonies at the same time," and then they'd say, "What? You can't listen?" You say, "I can listen to two symphonies at the same time." And he said, "They got one musician, one orchestra, and I can go to the orchestra and I can listen to the guy playing the violin. I can go to this. I can smell. I can taste. I can do whatever." And they go, "Come on, no, you can't." He said, "No, I can." He said, "Could you do three?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think I could do four." And he said, "You could do four things at the same time." He said, "Yeah." So they put him in an MRI at the Penn State University. Put him in there, and what they do is they have a composer, and he completely gets wiped out in the first one, or an orchestra leader. So they put it in, and they start he gets these four songs. They listen to these four songs, different composers, and then they put him in there, and they say, "Okay, start the Bach piece," and he goes, "Okay, so," and then they say, "Okay, now start the Handel piece." 30 seconds later, he starts the Handel piece. They say, "Okay, now start the Chopin piece," and then he starts it. And then after a couple of minutes, the fourth piece, start the fourth piece. And then they say, "Okay, stop." And meanwhile, they've got these pieces going in the control room. And they say, "Where are you in the Bach piece?" And he goes, "Da da da." And he's on the note. They go to the second piece, on the note. Third piece, on the note. Fourth piece, on the note. And you go, the same thing as the UFO thing. You start to realize how complex music and the mind is. Or the one that you should interview. If you're in Britain, you should interview this guy. The guy you probably know, the Angeli Symphony. Do you know the story of the Angeli Symphony?
I don't know.
Okay, Sharp is his name. Sharp. If you look up Angeli Symphony on YouTube, you'll see it. He's the only guy that the London Philharmonic Orchestra ever stood and applauded a composer. Here's a guy who ran a pub in Britain. His first daughter is born. His second son is born. His name is Ben. He dies at birth. His wife is in hospital, and he's devastated. He goes to the priest. They won't bury the kid in the yard. He's trying to figure out a place to bury his kid in this little shoebox. He's absolutely devastated. His wife just about dies, and all of a sudden he goes to sleep that night, and a voice comes to him in his dream and says, "Sometimes when this happens, we give the person a gift." And he starts to hear this symphony. This guy has no background in music, nothing, never played an instrument, whatever, and this symphony is played to him. And then he comes out of the symphony and he goes, "I got to compose this." So he tells his wife, he says, "I got to do this. I got to do this. They gave me this symphony for Ben. I got to do this." And she says, "No, no, no." And they don't take him seriously. And he said, "6 months, I'm going to London. I'm going to play this. I'm going to get the symphony. I'm going to compose it." She says, "You got no background in music. What are you, crazy? I mean, not the music." And he said, "No, it's in my head. Every note is in my head." So he goes to 6 months later, he leaves, and his wife goes, "Really?" He drives, and he says, "I drive to London, England." He's like, "I park." And he said, "Okay, what do I do next?" He says, dead silence. Nothing. He's sitting there and he's going, "What am I going to do?" And he ends up homeless. And then he finds some guy that his wife divorces him. He finds some guy who's a jazz player, and he's telling this guy, and there's actually video of him with the jazz guy, and he said, "No, it doesn't go like that. It goes like that. It goes like this. No, you got it wrong. No." And they do this whole thing, and then he takes it and he goes and he goes to get the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and they say, "No, you can't do this. You got to score the thing. It's going to cost like $1 million to score the thing." And he goes, "Oh, okay." And he goes away for another 20 years. It takes him 30 years. He goes back. He raises all this money, and he plays it. The London Philharmonic Orchestra plays it one time, and it's called the Angeli Symphony. And he held it in his head for 30 years. And then his wife, he gets back to his wife, and she said, I played it. I opened the windows and I played it full blast, and it's absolutely beautiful." And then they asked him, "Would you do it again if this happened again?" He said, "I had no choice." So when you see that, where he has an entire symphony carries around in his head for 30 years that gets composed and produced by the London Philharmonic Orchestra, you see like the power of the human mind and the fact that the stuff is there. And in fact, there's a James Ian Dolly just a couple of days ago, the guy that interviewed Jim Semivan. he wanted, I had a report that had been done on UFOs for President Johnson. He said, can I get it? I said, yeah, in exchange, tell me the story about the music. You were in this field. You heard the music. Tell me the story. Because I'm putting this in my next book, all this people who heard music and near-death experiences. Because you don't have any ears in near-death experience. So how are you hearing music and stuff like that? And what kind of music is it? Who's playing the music and stuff like that? And I said, tell me the story. So he tells me the story. Yeah, I had this experience, and I was in one with the light, and the light is there, and I can hear this and the beautiful choral crystal music playing in the background and stuff like that. And that's this whole thing. The music is in the field. That it's music is vibration. So you have these different ways of seeing things through sight and stuff, but it's not the eyes, it's not the ears that are hearing. It's because when you're in a near-death experience, your eyes are closed. You can't see anything. They're taped shut and stuff like that in an operation, and you're hearing stuff. You can sense everything. And so the thing is, where's the consciousness? It's not. We believe it's in the body. We're making this mistake. It's not. It's this other thing where I do the kids with the blindfold reading, which we're really trying to push. These kids that have the blindfold, a kid with a blindfold, you can teach him to see color with a blindfold on in like a couple of minutes. And there's an Australian team that's actually built an Australian team who do these obstacle courses, and they're drawing stuff and they're running around doing all this sort of stuff. And they got blindfolds, these mindfold blindfolds that you can't see through. And now the Canadians are getting involved, the Americans are getting involved. And I say we should have an Olympics of all these kids that have these blindfolds on. And this is the whole thing with the music. Like, where are we hearing? What actually hears? What actually sees? What actually tastes and stuff like that? Because people in the dream world will say, yeah, there's time and space. I can hear things. But is there time and space in a dream? No, there's no time and space in a dream. So it's the same thing. We're making these mistakes. It seems like there's time and space in a dream. It seems like you touch things and sense things. But is there actually, it's all this ooly stuff. It's all consciousness. And that's where you get quantum physics, where you can actually get the guys that started it says, consciousness is primary. Matter comes from consciousness. That was one of the things that gave me in the 2016 download. You got it backwards. It's not matter that creates consciousness. It's consciousness creates matter. You got everything backwards. And they're saying, it's not this, it's this. You think it's this, it's this. And
I'm going to throw it back to my original question then, which is everything, are we just tools? So are we the shaft of a pen and the creativity is the ink, and we're tapping into the field that you're calling it?
Yeah.
Does that mean we are essentially nothing? We have no imagination. Everything's coming from something that already exists.
We are everything. We are everything. So if you have it, you have your brain. Okay. So when people talk about, MRIs and you got to realize it's blood flow. All it is blood flow. They say, oh, look, this part of the brain. And we said the brain's doing this. The brain's the idiot in between. The brain ain't doing anything. Anybody who says to me that the brain, if we're talking and my hands are moving and I talk very fast. I said, anybody who thinks that anybody can talk at my speed, that thinks that there are neurons who are having little board meetings in my head, who are saying, what word are we going to put in next? Let's put this word in. Okay, now let's put this word. And then we have the little female neuron with a little bun on her head that's checking the grammar, and one's doing the hands and one's doing the mouth. And this is insane. This is the idea that there's these neurons. There's nobody doing anything. We are running the thing, and it's all the brain is just this functioning thing in between. We are not part. We are out there. We are everything, and it's the world is completely different than the way we assume. We're making all these mistakes about where it is, or where does memory come from? Where is this stuff? If I say to you this idea of knowing, say you get a song and you know this is a good song, or if when I had my download experience, the biggest thing it was the knowing that this is absolutely the way it works. You do not have to check this. And the way it is if you say you and I were friends as kids, you say, what was that guy that guy that ended up playing soccer for that big elite team or whatever, and then you say, oh, that was Jim. And you go, oh yeah, it was Jim. Yeah. And it's that idea. It's like that knowing. Oh yeah, it was Jim. And you say, was it Jim? For you sure? I know it was Jim. Don't tell me it wasn't Jim. I know. It's that knowing thing. And that's what happens in the sort of the music thing, that this stuff pops in and you have this sense of knowing, and you just reproduce it. But it's all sort of there, and it's just a so strange world that it's all one thing, but we're individuals, we're sparks of divine, and we always want to go to the nouns. We want to give it names. And what you do in science, and that's what skeptics will do with UFO stuff, give it a name and make it go away. They'll say, oh, that's just nature. That's just placebo effect. And I said, who the hell is that? you're just giving a name. You're just putting a name on. That doesn't mean it. That's like a bunch of hand waving. It doesn't mean anything. You're just putting a name on it, saying, "Oh, it's just evolution. It's just nature. It's just this. It's just that." And they're making all these excuses. And when you start to look at it, is this super complex universe that is all this? It's so complex you can't even imagine it.
That's the hard thing, is not being able to imagine it. Right, Grant, I've got pages and pages of questions that we
Well, we
didn't
can do
get
it
to,
again
but
sometime.
it's not a problem. So I'd love to speak to you again and actually really go through them, because I think you know a shed load of things, and I'd love to pick your brains on individual parts. I think we've covered a lot of great stuff tonight, by the way, and I'm on board with all of it, and I love it all. But for now, it's time to enter the Koit Zone. Koit Zone!
Okay.
Now, in the Koit Zone, Grant, I'm literally just going to take us down to base level. So this is not the big etheric field. This is just random ego and us as people. Yeah. So some of these are legitimate questions. Some of these are stupid questions, but just answer best you can. So let's start with, what is your favorite film?
Don't really watch films. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I guess, would be, if I were to think about it, there would be a couple that I big, but Close Encounters was a key movie for me.
No, fair play. It's a good film. I love it too. What is the grossest smell?
It's, I would say like a swamp that popped in my head.
Decay and matter. Yeah.
I spent a lot of time as a kid in swamps, sailing around on rafts. Yeah, that's pretty gross.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. If you weren't an author or investigator, what would you have been?
A football player. I wanted to be a field goal kicker. We play a Canadian football, but I was pretty good at playing sports, and I wanted to always be a field goal kicker, which is basically you get to go out 3 or 4 times a game and kick a ball 50 yards through the uprights. That was my big thing, was to be a field goal kicker.
Were you good?
I was a good kicker until a professional football player kicker started to show me how to kick, and after that, I was never any good. Oh. And I never pursued it, which is one of the things that I did in my life. Is I had all these dreams, but I would always sort of back away and and I never pursued it. So I don't know what would have happened, but and I was I was good at chess, but I walked away from that too. I walked away from a lot of stuff.
Do you think out there in another universe there's a Grant playing chess and a Grant playing football? Or there was?
Yeah. That's one I really have a hard time believing, that you have all these that you're living all your lifetimes at the same time. That's pretty hard for me to grasp, and that seems to be gaining credibility popular, more and more all the time. That just makes no sense whatsoever. And that's what I'm saying is, if you're the president of the United States and you got to go and tell that story, good luck.
It's just a Pandora's box. It really is. What is the most dangerous thing that you've ever done?
Oh, jeez, I can't think. Dangerous thing I've ever done. It's in the back of my mind. That's the thing. Where is it? Like, it's in the back of my mind. I can sort of see it.
Is it an activity? A bit like hiking, that sort of thing.
It's just blanking. There's something that I did at one point where it was pretty crazy. Why would I do something like that? But it's escaping me.
It'll come to you in a sec. It'll come to you, no doubt, at the end. If heaven is a place on earth, to you, where is heaven?
Heaven is in winning. Heaven is success. To me, it's a game thing of the ego of, I figured this out. I got this. So when I have a moment like I had last night, where you go like, wow, I got that 45 seconds before it came on the tape. That to me, that is like absolutely, and the opposite is the hell, where I just can't figure it out, where it's not going anywhere. So to me, it's always this intellectual, I guess, like an intellectual person who likes to play the mind game of figuring things out. Whereas most people, they just want to have a good time.
And you've actually almost subverted my expectations there because I was expecting you to say a location, and you did go down the intellectual route by throwing that question on its head by saying it was a character trait, and I like that. Well played.
Yeah.
Can
Well,
you
I could give you a
sing? Go
place
on.
too. I mean, the
Go
first
on
time
then.
the first time I saw the Colorado River would be heaven. I want to go back. It's on my bucket list, and because I live on a river that's a muddy river, it's completely looks dark and muddy and stuff like that. First time I saw the Colorado River in place called in BC. Now I forgot the name of the town, but I was just floored. Like clear glass water, we could see the
Oh,
bottom
amazing.
bottom of the river. That was to me. I've always thought I've got to go back there before I die. I got to get there and see this again. So that would be the place.
What's the river that runs through Hoover Dam? Is that the same one? Is that the Colorado River?
That's the Colorado. Yeah,
Yeah, I've been on
yeah,
that on a raft yonks ago, but it wasn't clear. That was muddy.
yeah.
Hey ho. Can you sing or play an instrument?
No. Well, I sang. I was in choir, but that was the key to the tuned in paranormal world of creativity. Because when Chris Bledsoe contacted me, he said, "I got a message from the Guardians." I said, "Really?" I said, "Cool. What do they got? What do they want me to know?" He said, "They want you to know the messages and the music." I said, "Well, Chris, you may be talking to the wrong guy, Chris, because I'm a radio talk guy. I listen to podcasts. I don't listen to music. I'm not interested in music. My mother was a church organist for 40 years. My sisters played in a group. My father built theater organs. My whole family's musical. I couldn't care less. They put me in music lessons for a couple of weeks, had to pull me out. And I said, you may be talking to the wrong guy, Chris. And he said, well, one song you should listen to is Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. I said,
Hmm.
whatever, Chris, whatever you're saying, like, I'm not listening, Chris. I'm not interested in music. And he said, the other one you should listen to, and this is how they drag you down the rabbit hole. The other one you should listen to is After the Gold Rush by Neil Young. I go, Neil Young? Neil Young's involved in this alien thing? And he said, well, yeah. And if you listen to it, you see the lyrics for After the Gold Rush, it says the devastation, we're in devastation, and the silver seeds come and take the chosen ones to another star system. And I said, Neil Young's involved. And as I told you, I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, the coldest major city in the world, where people in Canada don't even want to visit. Neil Young grew up here. I said, Neil Young is involved. Like
No
we're
way.
famous for Neil Young. Neil Young is involved, and that's what got me going. And then I saw the lyrics of the song, and then I realized that Patti Smith and a bunch of other experiencers, people like there's a lot of musicians are experiencers. And when I saw that she had sung the song and the Flaming Lips had sung the song, and I'm going, what? This is kind of weird. And then I got down the rabbit hole and I started looking at all this music and where music comes from and downloads and stuff like that. But that all started with this Chris
Little
Bledsoe.
nudge. Yeah, fair play. Um, you take a pill that knocks you out, but once you wake up, right, you're alive as you, but in a time and place of your choosing. Where in history or the future are you going?
1916 Winnipeg. I'm obsessed with 1916 in Winnipeg. There's a wall. I used to be a manager at the University of Manitoba, running a bunch of buildings. I ran the nursing building, and the basement of the nursing building, there are photographs from 1910 to 1920, 1920, 1930. All these, all down these sections. There's one particular photo in 19. It's from 1916 in the 1910, 1920. There's three girls and there's a bunch of girls, and there's three girls in the front. Became obsessed with that picture. And then I had a woman draw I don't know if you've interviewed her. She's from Great Britain. I'm gonna blank on her name. She's a spirit artist. She claims that Leonardo da Vinci is right is drawing through her.
Oh
So
no, not
um you just look up I'll send a link. Just remind
send
me, I'll
it to
send
me.
you the
Yeah,
link.
that'd be very
Yeah,
useful.
and
Definitely.
so when I saw this photo, I was obsessed with it. And then she was doing the drawing, and it's somebody that's dead. And so she goes into trance. She just sits there, and her hand draws, and she's not there, and whatever. And I thought, well, it's pretty cool. Leonardo, even if it's not real, Leonardo da Vinci's drawing it. It's cool. So I send her the money, and she sends me the photograph. And I remember my family's all there, and they got the envelope, and I'm going, wow, like, who's this going to be? We open the envelope, and this girl comes out, and I showed it to my mother. I said, my mother's like 90 years old. I said, hey, so who's this? Yeah, doesn't look familiar to me. And I showed it to my sister. My older sister's got 10,000 photographs. I said, hey, so who is it? nobody in this family. Nobody in this family. And I'm going, what? Really? But she's got a thing. She looks like Princess Di, but she's got a thing on that's on the same photograph from 1916 of the
Whoa.
British thing. And I'm going, like, what the hell's this girl's from 1910 to 1920. I'm trying to think who she is. And then I made the joke. I put it on Facebook and I said, this is terrible. I've got this girl. I can't figure out who she is. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out who it is. And the last day I die, as I'm dying, this girl's going to come back and be crying and say, you don't remember who I was? Oh, I can't believe you didn't remember who I was. And I put this on Facebook and they all got mad. The guy that did Skull, the head medium for Skull, said, did you see what he said about you? He's making fun of you. And I go back, I go, no, it was a joke. Come on, it was a joke. Like, and so 1916 is an obsession I have, that time period. And there's another one that the Addie story, you know, the Addie story from Great Britain, where they have Addie comes across this Ouija board.
Doesn't ring a bell.
And she's from that same period as well, 1916. And I went through so many British photographs because she in this mediumship thing, this photograph appears under the seance table, and it's this picture of this class, and it looks like from 1915, 1916 in that period, and it's Great Britain. It's outside of school. I went through every photograph I could find of a school, of a class in 19. I couldn't find the teachers. I couldn't find, and this Addie is this girl. It's in top right in the photograph, and so that period of time, there's some connection.
It fascinates you, yeah.
And to me, it's like, that's the thing, is to me, it's the game. Like, what's that UFO? And this is even more an obsession. I've got this girl's photo. I've got it in here. I've got it in the other room. And I just sit there and look at it and say, so who are you?
Do you think it's you from a previous life?
No, I don't think it was somebody I don't think I was married to this person. It seems to me it might be a soul guide type thing. That's the one impression, because it does seem to be somebody but it's from that time period. And I'm thinking,
what was your gut reaction to it? What was your
What's
gut
that?
reaction? Your first instinct when you saw the image? What did you think it was?
I just said, like, this is weird. Who the heck is this?
Oh, okay,
It did
so you
look
didn't
like
have an
Princess
inkling.
Di. I just thought, this is weird. And I was showing it to people, like, do you recognize this person? Because I figured it was going to be one of the relatives, and it would be very easy to pick off. But it was not, and it has never gotten any easier. Must have looked at that photograph for 50 hours, just sitting there in a chair, just looking at it and saying, come on, give me a hint. Who are you? And the only thing that comes across is that it's not somebody I was married to. It seems to be some sort of spirit guide, but wearing that collar. It's a collar definitely from the 1910, 1920 period.
Interesting. Well, I hope you find the answer to it, because obviously we like to solve mysteries. A couple more in the Koit zone, and then we will wrap up. So, what is your go-to sauce on food?
McDonald's.
Oh, right,
No,
barbecue sauce.
I eat salad. I go to McDonald's 3 times a day for coffee. That's what I do. I walk, and it's a mile and a half there, a mile and a half back, and I walk about 35,000 steps a day, and that's where I do my thinking, and that's where I get these ideas pop into my head and stuff like that. But for food, I'm a minimalist, as big as you can get. I basically eat salad. I just make my salad, and as I'm making my salad, I'm listening to podcasts, and then I eat as fast as I can. And so I have one bowl, I have one spoon. That's all I own, and I have my salad, and I cut my salad up, and I've done this for years. And I'll eat a lot of I'll eat oatmeal and stuff. But otherwise, food is. I have no interest in food. I have no interest in almost anything. I'm obsessed with the paranormal, with UFOs, and now with this girl.
Wow, wow. That's quality. What is your worst ever injury?
I guess it'd be a head injury, running into a pole. Oh no, if you're talking injury or sickness, I've been twice diagnosed terminal, which really changes your life.
Whoa.
I was diagnosed with a couple months to live. Malignant melanoma. They said they'd seen it 1,000 times before. I said, I don't think that's what it is. They said, we know what we're looking at. And that went on for 6 months, where I was on the edge. The only thing that kept me sort of alive and kept going was I dealt with a woman by the name of Kay Randall May, who's the top medical intuitive in the United States. She's actually being used by Kit Green, the CIA guy, and they're using her for UFO stuff. Answer this, answer that. And she can get in the field. And he said, I don't know how accurate she is when it comes to UFO stuff. I know that when it comes to medical stuff, she's 95 to 100% accurate. So I contacted her, And I said, "What do you see?" And then she told me all the stuff. I said, "What about my left armpit? What do you see there?" And she said, "Oh, nothing serious." And I said, "Well, they tell me I got cancer. I got malignant melanoma. It's in the nerve sheath stuff in there." She said, "No, it's not cancer. No, I don't care what they say. It's not cancer." And that's what kept me going. But it took 6 months for them. And at one time, they told me I had congestive heart failure. That's it. And so I've had two of these experiences where I was told you're going to die, and I got the will ready. I got everything all sort of sold off, and I've been through that. So it's almost like a near death experience where you realize that it will end. And it's not until that happens to you that you actually realize, because until then you just sort of play a game. Yeah, it's going to happen, but you really don't think about it. And it's when someone sits down and tells you got 3 months to live, then everything, believe me, everything changes.
That congestive heart failure thing, is that what led you to do all your walking and your eating your bowl of salad?
No, I'd always done it. That's why I
Oh,
used to
okay.
bike across the city, 10 kilometers across the city to a food bank when I retired. And I'm going, congestive heart failure. What are you talking about? I bike 10 miles a
Hmm.
day. It's like I couldn't believe that he was saying this. And then when they finally did this test where they film the heart, they speed your heart up, and they film the heart at the same time. And then he said, "You got no blockages." And then as I'm leaving, I'm like, "Oh, wow, like I've been saved," and I'm walking out of the room. And as I'm leaving, he says, "But I still believe you got something." It's like, okay,
The
thanks
fear
for
again. There's that fear. Yeah, selling it to you.
that.
Right, last question in the Koit zone. Which cartoon character would you like to see come to life?
Um, Mickey Mouse, I guess, would be the one that old school, because the guy that created all those cartoons was a big UFO guy. He was involved in the alien autopsy. Supposedly showed the film to a British film guy. So I'm sensitive to the Disney type stuff. That was just the name that popped in my head, but
No, that's fair enough. It's the right one if it's the first. Right, that is the end of the Koit zone. Thank you ever so much, which leads us to the final question. So, what else do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures other than chess and walking?
I don't play chess. I haven't played chess for 50 years. I,
Ooh,
I stopped when I started to lose a couple of games. No, I walk. That's basically what I do. I walk. I work on UFO stuff. I listen to podcasts. I basically spend all day long in in thought, in trying to figure this thing out. That's what thrills me. That's what keeps me going. And
that's
I don't
amazing.
really, I don't have a TV. I don't.
Oh, you don't? Whoa.
I don't watch movies. I used to watch the odd movie. I don't watch movies anymore. I've become totally a solitary guy who is determined to figure this thing out, and I think I've gotten pretty close. Although, if I've got one more psilocybin session I'm going to do. I'm pretty sure when I go in, they'll say to me, "We thought we told you before. You don't have this figured out. Your ego, get your ego out of the way." They just kept hammering away. But I think I have a pretty good understanding as to how the world works, and I'm content that I've sort of figured it out. I may not be close, but the world, I think, changes. It keeps morphing. It keeps getting more complex. So even when we figure it out, there may be people who are making a more complex world. Almost like David Bohm talked about. He was one of the famous physicists that said, when you figure out this whole quantum physics thing, there's just another level below that. And everybody
Yeah.
went, "No, that's not true." And I think that is true, that it just gets more complex and more complex. That's my experience. It just gets more complex the deeper you look into it. But it's the awe and the wonder. You just go like, wow, how magnificent the brain is, and how this is happening, and people's happening by accident. And I go, give your head a shake. You must have had an injury. There's no way. I'm just a rebel when I see how complex the world actually is.
I'm with you on that one, definitely. And it is that spreading thing. Every question I have, I might get an answer, but it leads me to two or three more questions. And that's the never ending fractal of questions and answers, isn't it?
And that may be
Which,
what it is. It's this game. We enjoy playing the game. We want to do
yeah,
something, as opposed to sitting on a beach and drinking Mai Tais for a billion years. I could not even
yeah,
imagine
boring.
that. It's almost like a
No.
kid when they get out of school in the summer, where after the first week they're all bored and they don't know what to do. That's what it's all about. Where have a good time and enjoy.
On that basis, keeping active and stuff, what are you currently working on? This is the last question. So, what's going on in your world, work wise?
I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm writing this book that it's like the inspired book. The inspired book and the music book are the thing, because that's what it's about. It's about how does the world work? The inspiration, where do ideas come from? Where do songs come from? And you get into this other side of the world. It's not this physical world. So I'm working on a book called The Big Game. So I look at paranormal phenomena. I look at the world being perfect. I look at orbs. And I show the crossovers that orbs appear in ghosts. They appear in UFOs. They appear in all these crossovers. That it's all the same phenomena. We're parsing it. That's what happened with the original contact modality that Ray Hernandez got when he met with me, and I gave a consciousness lecture because he said I can contact these things. I contacted, what's this about? And I said, well, it's consciousness. And he came to watch, and 2 days later, he's on the Miami freeway, and he gets pulled out of his car. He's listening to an NPR radio station. Suddenly, he's pulled out of his car, and he's up in this whatever it is, this zone, and he sees this wheel spinning, and there's these images, and the one image is remote viewing, and these other images are UFOs and paranormal phenomena and ghosts and stuff like that. And this wheel is spinning, and the voice says to him, Ray, you've got to quit parsing this stuff. It's all the same thing. And in the middle of the wheel was consciousness. And that's this idea of contact modalities. It's all one thing. And you got to quit parsing it. You got to quit separating this, you, me, paranormal phenomena. They're all the same phenomena. They're just expressing in different ways. So this is what this book is going to be. It's a huge book. I've broken it into 2 books because there's so many bizarre stories I tell about all these paranormal phenomena. And I'm really thrilled to be doing that. I have another disclosure book, but I hate the disclosure thing. I just had the disclosure book come out, but I say that's a waste of time. It just don't even read the book. You basically, it's just
a glowing recommendation of your work there. Don't even read it.
Yeah. So I have another one that the guy's going to edit, but I go, I don't know, and then they're doing the same thing. I got dragged into this thing where they're doing the same thing again. They're doing the old, we're here from the government. We're here to give you documents and tell you what's going on. I'm involved in another program, which will be the 5th book if that happens, where I'm going, oh no, they're doing it again. It's like, and they're gradually leaking. They're doing the same thing. The phenomena is covering up. People got to realize that the phenomena is not disclosing. They're leaving these little clues. They're right brain, so they're leaving symbols. Right brain is symbols. The government is doing the same thing. They're confirming the fact that this is real, but they're not telling you. They're not spilling the milk. They're not going to give you the full disclosure. They're just going to keep confirming this. So they're both doing the same thing. They're doing this sort of game where you got to try to figure it out, and there's bird codes and messages, and you're trying to figure out who's who and who all these birds and who's this bird and who's the raven and who's the falcon. And it's just, they play this game because spies like to play that kind of weird game. And the phenomena is doing the same thing. As Jim Semivan said, it cajoles you, it teases you, it lies to you, and but it'll never take you home to meet the family. They're never going to disclose. That's what it is. They want you to figure it out. They want you to get curious and say, what the heck was that happened last night? And you get curious, and you start going, and you start to realize the world is this, and you realize this about the world, and it gets more complex, and and we all evolve. And you and I have discussions. We may have had discussions before we were born. You said, I'm going to do this podcast. I said, I'm going to write these books. I'll be on your show. I'll come on your show. And we planned this all before. And as we discuss, it doesn't mean that we understand things or we explain things. You have your opinion, I have an opinion. But the more we discuss it, it's like the UFO thing. I was in it since 1975. And in 2017, in 2009, I wrote an article called The 64 Reasons They Decided Not to Tell You the Truth. I said, they're never going to tell you the truth. There's absolutely no way. And then 2017, suddenly, this New York Times puts out the article and says, yeah, it's true. The government's investigating UFOs. And everybody said, oh, one of the reasons, the 64 reasons, I said, people are going to jump off bridges, the religions are going to go crazy, the stock market's going to melt down. And what happened in 2017? Nothing. Because the government got everybody ready. They got people acclimatized. Everybody went, yeah, I knew that already. Okay, now are there aliens? Where are the aliens from? And what they're doing is they're gradually, and we have these discussions, we may not confirm it, but the more we talk about it, the more it'll be the point where Max Planck says, you do not move a subject down the field by convincing your opponents you're right. An idea, and he had quantum physics. He was being oppressed in quantum physics. He said an idea moves one funeral at a time. Your opponent dies, and the new generation, the young people, is not offended with the idea. That's what's happening. We're talking about it, and the young kids come in, and they don't have all the skepticism, and they go, yeah, of course.
Or stigma. Yeah, they have none of it, do they?
And that's what's happening. The consciousness is slowly rising, and that's what they want. They want it to go slowly up, and it just gets more complex. And once we get to that level, it's just going to be another level, another level, another level as we go along.
A puzzle within a puzzle. Grant, thank you ever so much for your time. It's really appreciated. Like I said, I've got pages and pages of questions. Hopefully I can have you back at some stage in the future and rattle through them, because I look forward to all those answers on top of all the answers you've given us today. Guys and gals who've been watching this, check out the links in the description to Grant's socials, books on Amazon, etc., etc. Go check them out. Well worth the read, well worth your time. Grant, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.